This edition of Green Rush Live is supported by Canna Business Resources, helping you grow with Canna Business funding. Check them out at cannabusinessresources.com. Hi, everyone. I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young, and you're probably wondering, what am I doing on a growing show? After all, I'm a convicted plant killer. That's why I surround myself with these beautiful plastic babies. But now I have found the secret to all those people out there who just don't want to deal with growing a plant indoors or outdoors. You just don't have enough confidence. Hey, check out greengoddesssupply.com. That's where you'll find the armoire system. Basically, it's growing for dummies like me. Check it out. The armoire at greengoddesssupply.com. Hi, everybody. Welcome again to another live edition of Friday afternoons Green Rush Live. This is the time on Pro Cannabis Media when we talk about the cannabis business. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, and every Friday we get some of the most amazing guests to come on. We usually have a little theme, and we do again today. And it's a very interesting theme because every single person I meet in the cannabis industry is always, it seems, looking for capital or funding alternatives. How do you fund your company? Let's say you have a great idea like, I don't know, a 24/7 live pro cannabis news, talk, and information channel. Is it possible to do a crowdfunding initiative, or is it equity financing? Is it debt financing? There's all these fancy schmancy ways to basically get your company and your dream going. And joining me as my guest host on this Friday afternoon is one of our dear friends here at Pro Cannabis Media. His name is Rick Thompson. He's from Michigan. He's the executive director of Normal and also isn't it the Michigan Cannabis Business Development Association too, Rick?
It's actually the business development group, and I'm schmancy as well. So you should know that about me.
Rick Schmancy. And speaking of schmancy, how's that for a segue? Eric Robichaud is with us. He is the CEO of Green Goddess Supply. And Eric is located in Massachusetts with, let's face it, guys, this is where the world headquarters of Pro Cannabis Media is. We're here every Friday. Eric and I see each other pretty regularly now on his own kind of virtual networking event. Hey, before we get into Green Goddess Supply and your own crowdfunding, give a plug to what you do on Tuesday, 11:45 Eastern, when you open up your networking group online. It's like a big BNI group on Zoom.
Right. So for anyone who is used to BNI, I say it's sort of like a BNI group, except without all the crazy restrictions and rules and so forth. We're in the cannabis industry. It's a lot more laid back, right? But basically, it's a business lead referral networking group. So it's not a place you just come and meet a few people. I mean, you certainly meet some people, but it's every week we come back week after week after week. And what we're really doing is building relationships amongst those members, and they become a referral engine. And it's a really, really strong referral group. I was talking to another member in the group this morning who was telling me that he does a bunch of different groups and he gets more leads on a regular basis from this group than anything else. I think one of the keys is, unlike a BNI, I've done the BNI group in the past when I was running my web and marketing agency before Green Goddess. And, you sit around the table and here's the divorce attorney and there's the HVAC guy. And then there's, just all these different things. And I'm thinking, I don't have a lead for the divorce attorney. I hope I don't, but actually, but it's like, you have these spheres of influence, I guess. In this case, it's all it's all a nexus to the cannabis industry. So essentially a lead for one is a lead for all. It's really strong.
Yeah. And I enjoy it. I also really like how you structure it. You open a question, kind of like a breaker to get everybody.
A nice breaker, sure. Sometimes it's just to get people talking, because sometimes you make connections and it might be something else. Like I play men's ice hockey. Some people, really into skeet shooting or whatever it is, and sometimes that you bring this up and you just get these weird connections, and it's just ways of continuing to get people connected and help people remember each other and so forth. Oh, that was the guy that, plays the harmonica, professionally. Like what, So
I get you. I know. I love that. That's why I enjoy the whole Zoom thing. And if anybody knows the story of Pro Cannabis Media, really this evolved out of the pandemic when everybody went home and we all needed to figure out how we're going to communicate, do business. We started using Zoom, and then, the magic man, Dan French, the man behind the curtain, figured out a way to kind of switch it all up, find the right software. And here we are live on Pro Cannabis Media. Our Roku channel is PCM TV, Apple channel PCM TV. And very soon, everybody, we're launching a new looking website. Still, we'll have all the videos on demand. You'll still be able to watch it live right on our website, right on the home page, so that when you go to Pro Cannabis Media, the live stream will be playing, and then you, the consumer, have an opportunity to go off and see what show you'd like to see, because there is video on demand as well. So here's an icebreaker that Eric used a few weeks ago, and I'm going to give it to Rick Thompson. All right. And then, Rick, I'm going to allow you to actually ask the first question about Green Goddess Supply. But Rick, what's your favorite rock band?
My favorite rock band, Queen. You have to go with although
Great.
it's a commercial fave, but man, you can't go wrong with some Freddie Mercury.
No, absolutely not. I tell you what, Eric, tell us about Green Goddess Supply, and then we'll talk about the crowdfunding initiative that you're right in the middle of on a site called Start Engine. Am I right?
Correct. Absolutely. So Green Goddess Supply started off as a manufacturer of smoke shop accessories. And we basically position ourselves as a cultivation through to consumption cannabis lifestyle brand. We have a catalog with over 300 SKUs of products, such as we're really well known for our wood products, really beautiful, gorgeous, like bamboo rolling trays and sifter boxes. But then we have grinders, and we've got pipes, and we've got glass and bongs, and, you name it. Dabbers and up and down, over 300 SKUs. And then of course the crown jewel in the product line is called the Armoire. I don't know if it's backwards or not, but the Armoire, our home grow system, unlike anything you've ever seen before, probably. And then because of the Armoire, that's why we are doing the crowdfunding campaign.
There you go. So let's explain the Armoire, everybody. Imagine, if you will, the ability to grow cannabis in your living room and nobody knows. Right. Nobody can smell it. It's hidden inside this beautiful piece of furniture, right, Eric?
Right. Absolutely. So the impetus behind this originally, my business partner, Vincent, has been growing since the 70s, and his friends and family would come up to him and say, hey, I just want, I want just one plant for myself. Like, I'm not trying to, this isn't black market. I'm not trying to make a business out of this, but I just want to grow for myself. One of the things that people don't realize is that when a state goes legal, the home grow will be legal throughout the state, but just because they've legalized doesn't mean you necessarily have access or convenient access where you are. In California, approximately 60% of the residents in California do not have convenient, reasonable access to cannabis dispensaries, because although it's state legal, they allow the towns and the counties on a county by county basis to opt in or opt out. Like where I live in Massachusetts, I'm in Milford. Milford voted no to pot shops. We don't have any in Milford itself. Now, of course, they're all around and 5 minutes away. They're everywhere.
Wait, I'm going to interrupt for a second.
Go ahead.
Isn't that where Sierra Naturals Air Wellness is located in Milford in Massachusetts? Am I right?
Yes. So there were two companies. There was Proverti Testing Labs, which was one of the first testing labs in the country. Yep. And then also Sierra Naturals had their grow operation, and not a retail store, but the grow op was here. And actually, when this all came up, the town voted no. That included shutting them down, making them leave. And there was a huge stink. Like, we've been here for years. We have millions of dollars invested in this. And we're not even a retail shop. Nobody knows. We're off in some industrial, industrial park somewhere. Nobody knows we're here. We've been great residents. We're paying all these taxes and stuff. There was huge blowback. You're going to put us out of business? I mean, what is it? And they ended up grandfathering them, but no new pot businesses in Milford and no shops. There's no retail at all in Milford. Now, take that out to California. You have entire counties. So like if you're out in now, some of this is starting to change, so my information may not be exact up to the minute, but I know there was a point like Fresno. If you lived in Fresno, there's just no pot shops around. 60% of the residents, wouldn't have a pot shop within like 2-hour drive. So what do you do, especially if you're using it for medicinal? Let's say older retired folks don't drive. There's nothing within 2 hours. You're not getting deliveries. How are you getting it? It may be legal and you may be allowed to, but how are you reasonably getting it? So people would, ask Vincent, can you just teach me to grow? And he'd be like, where do I even start? It can be really, really complicated, right? So he invented the armoire, and there were several features that went into this, solving several problems. So it's basically the armoire allows everybody and anybody, and that's important. This isn't for the early adopters that want to roll up the sleeves and MacGyver some solution with a tent and figure it all out and whatever. This is for the late majority, for everybody else who just wants like a dishwasher. It's an appliance. It just works in the house, in your home. Not a big, ugly tent you have to hide somewhere. Perfect for apartments. If you're in an inner city, like a Boston brownstone or, New York City walk-up apartment, where you stick in a tent anyway. You're not putting it in your living room in a 900 square foot apartment. So this is small, discreet, go right in your living room. It's actually meant to be seen. So it's discreet, and we teach people to grow. Unlike tents where you buy all the equipment and you're on your own, we will teach you how to grow and you will be successful. And it's designed for the beginner.
And because my video director, Dan French, is so good, he, of course, was running what we call in the business B-roll. As you're talking about the armoire, the audience was able to get a tour of this incredible device. So there you go. Hey, Rick, the story that Eric tells about Milford, and is that repeated in Michigan as well?
Oh, certainly. We have about 1,700 municipalities, and only about 170 have said yes to cannabis businesses. So very much like the description that you talked about. We've also had some communities too who initially offered things like cultivation setups, but then later on rejected retail as well. Our companies here in Michigan are extremely litigious. We like to sue. So anytime a community, there's a whiff of them trying to shut something down or to change something that someone should be grandfathered in, their lawyers are right on it. But it would have been exactly the same situation Eric described had some of our long-term cannabis cultivators been asked to leave, for example, a city like Dimondale outside of Lansing. So those are all too common stories throughout the United States of America. And Eric's also right when he says, the city itself says no, but right outside the city, it's like crazy town, right? So the fact is, you have to question, what's the motive behind saying no? Clearly, it's not trying to preserve some kind of culture. What is that? A culture of denial? That's not one you want to embrace as a community. So
sounds like Massachusetts.
Yeah, right. And I think a lot of it, like you're starting to see the towns that originally said no in California. More recently, there've been new voting, new referendums, and things like that. They're starting to come online. Like they're starting to say, okay, let's. Because we're seeing it here, like they're in Massachusetts, they had a 3% host community agreement tax and all this kind of stuff, right? Host community impact tax. And now they're going all this push to repeal that and everything else, right? Because I think people were really worried. Like I was concerned. We have a shop that opened up literally directly across the street from us. And we're on this little dead end and there's a lot of traffic over here already. And I was concerned, what is all this traffic going to do? We're going to have lines backed up. But the impact has been, nothing. Okay, keep moving. No big deal. They didn't have to widen streets. They didn't have to put in cops directing traffic. They didn't have to put in stoplights. So it's basically like a non-event, like nothing happened. I think actually based on foot traffic and all that, you'd probably actually have more of a problem if a Dunkin' Donuts went in there and they wouldn't be charging, the host community impact, So I think a lot of people overreacted. Like, we don't want that in our town. We don't want all the traffic. We don't want that element. And then realizing that, the other shoe dropped, the other shoe never dropped.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I wouldn't be surprised if eventually Milford's like, hey, you know what? It turns out looking around, it's no big deal. All right, we'll let them.
And I know there's quite a few liquor stores in Milford.
Oh, every street corner.
I used to drive through Milford to get to the tiny town of Mendon when I lived in Mendon with my son Gabe a few years back. Eric, let's talk about Start Engine. Let's talk about what you're trying to do. How much money are you raising? How does that work? And obviously, I want you to give a plug to find out if people want to take part in your raise and own a little piece of the Green Goddess Supply empire, right?
The empire, right. And, or as we also like to say, invest in the future of home grow as well. Help the home grow industry build and grow. We do feel on the home grow side, we often feel like the Rodney Dangerfield of the cannabis industry. We just get no respect. Like, it's all about big business, all about the MSOs and Wall Street and the investments and the pot shops. The home grow side is ignored and overlooked constantly. But it is incredibly important, and we're champions for trying to empower that. And we use that word. We're on a mission to empower everybody in any way to be able to grow their own at home if they want to. And so, yes, we're doing a launch on Start Engine. There are several platforms out there, and we looked at them all. There are a bunch of them that are kind of similar, but they all have different nuances to them. Obviously, we chose at the end of the day to work with Start Engine. Start Engine is the one, if you've seen them on TV, they're tied in with Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank and all that. And they're in the process of doing an IPO and going public, which was one of the things we kind of liked. Is we know that from a compliance standpoint and so forth, they have eyes on them, and they're not screwing around, so to speak. But there's also things like there's Mainvest. Now Mainvest is a little different in that it's debt, you're taking loans, micro loans. So you're crowdsourcing little micro loans. So, $500 or $1,000 or whatever, $2,000 at a pop times however many people, but they're loans that get paid back. There's Seedvest, there's Weed Funder. There's several different platforms out there. Republic, I believe, there's a bunch of them. And they're all a little different and have different focus and different, so you have to, and some of them won't touch, like for us, cannabis. Some of them, they may be great platforms, but they won't touch cannabis. You can't do it. There's some that you can. And so you have to look at all these. We chose Start Engine for several reasons. We liked their breadth. They do claim to have 750,000 investors on their platform. So you tie into that base. Just how sophisticated they are and all the services and the process and all that. And then some of them will do focus on the safe vehicle. And this is something that you want to look into and you want to decide, am I looking for debt funding? Am I looking for equity funding? And if you're looking for equity, are you doing straight up shares? What we're doing on Start Engine is we're selling shares straight up. Okay. For the retail investor, we were really concerned about doing a safe. I think a safe vehicle, SAFE, it's an acronym. I don't mean safe as in we're all safe and sound, but it's an acronym. But it's a type of it's sort of like a promise towards towards shares in the future if you have a conversion event. And we were a little concerned about that. And, different people can look at it and everyone has their own opinion. We were concerned that for what we're doing at crowdfunding, retail investors, not necessarily as savvy, like not dealing with institutional investors who get it and know all this stuff and completely understand what they're doing. We thought it was going to be an uphill battle to try to, push a safe vehicle to a retail investor who doesn't get it. Wait a minute, I'm putting money in but I'm not actually getting shares. I'm getting the promise of some future conversion event. We just thought it was a bridge too far. So we went with Start Engine, where we're doing our offering. You can see it on Start Engine. It's not a secret. They're 95 cents a share. You can come in, go check it out. But basically, for as low as $285, it starts at $285 and up. You can get 300 shares and you're off and running. You have shares of Green Goddess. You're an investor, just like similar to buying, shares of Apple or something. You're buying shares.
Yeah. I think the crowdfunding idea is a fascinating idea. It is an idea that we have kicked around here, and let's just say it's on the table among other things. Rick, in Michigan, do you know any companies that have done any crowdfunding and have had successful raises?
I've not. In Michigan, of course, it's just as difficult to get funding as it is in Massachusetts, and capital is the #1 restrictor of access to the industry for entrepreneurs. There's no question about it. So crowdfunding, as far as that goes, it's a unique solution. Oftentimes people think about that not necessarily for business launches, but for personal reasons or bereavements or what have you. But I think it's perfectly valid when you're talking about launching a company, especially if you're offering something of value in return, like a stock option. I was fascinated by that.
Right. Now, when you say crowdfunding can be more, that's kind of like saying vehicle. Well, am I talking an 18-wheeler? Am I talking a motorcycle? Am I talking a Toyota Camry? Vehicle is a broad category. Crowdfunding can have multiple. So like you just said, this is not a like GoFundMe. This is not donations. I'm not crowdsourcing donations. Right. It's crowdsourcing. But what it is, if you don't mind, I can tell a little bit of the story where it came from. This all started, and there are other variations and, going back or whatever, but really what we're doing is called a Reg CF or regulation crowdfunding. Okay. And what does this mean? Where does this come from? This started after the 2008, 2009 sort of, crash, the Great Recession and so forth. And we were bailing out, too big to fail, bailing out the banks, bailing out Wall Street, bailing out Ford Motor Company and all these, huge corporations and stuff. And people were pissed. Be like, wait a minute, we're our tax money, we're bailing out these huge monstrosity companies. Meanwhile, where's the help for the little guy on Main Street? We're bailing out Wall Street, but, giving the finger to Main Street. So originally under the Obama administration back like 2000, after the Great Recession and all that stuff, they put together this regulation CF plan to allow small companies to sell stock, pre-IPO companies, to raise funds through an SEC regulated raise. And it went so successful. You could do up to $1 million. And it went so well and it was so successful that later under Trump administration, they doubled down on it. This is a bipartisan thing. They doubled down on it and extended it. You can go up to 5 million now, and extended it and enhanced it. And what it does is it allows the retail investor, it does two things. So for the investor and for the company, for the business. For the business, it allows us to go and sell shares in a more public way without actually having to go through an IPO. But we have done, this is SEC sanctioned, it's SEC monitored. We're in the Edgar database. I had to file a Form C with the SEC. We had to go through all of the steps, pretty much just like going public. Okay. We had third-party independent financial reviews and all of this stuff. And we are bound by these rules and regulations. And so, so I've been talking to investors. Besides doing the crowdfunding thing, we're talking to, some larger institutional investors as well. They may come in through the Start Engine or maybe afterwards or whatever. So we're having all these conversations. And they were saying they love the fact that we did this with Start Engine because it makes their lives so much easier. There's a whole bunch of vetting that they know has been done already. And that, we're not just some small company that's like, hey, you want to write me a check? That we've gone through this process. And the process took us, you could probably do it faster, but I think we were pretty reasonable in that, we also have a business to run. We're trying to get all these things done, working with, the compliance people at the SEC, or the lawyers through the SEC filings, working with, we had to do independent third-party financial audits and things like that. And, that guy, all right, give me a week or two, gives me a laundry list of, like a huge list of things to do and statements and all this stuff. And financial statements, we get them all, and he comes back with 30 more things. Now, can I see this? Can I see that? Can I see this? Can I see? You give him all that, and he comes back, all right, now can I see this? Can I see that? And just all that process, it took months. It takes like 3 to 5 months to go through that whole process.
Right.
So it is quite a process.
It's easier if I can walk the streets of Boston and meet people and ask them for a check, but that's not going to happen. I get that. Okay.
Yeah.
I totally get that. Eric, tell us exactly where to go. What's the URL? We are going to be running a few video announcements with Eric talking about this Start Engine raise, but how can people find this online?
Sure. So we're doing it on the Start Engine platform. So it's startengine.com. green-goddess, GODDESS. So it's just startengine.com/green-goddess, and it'll come right up, and you can read all in gory detail all about what we're doing.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing thing. And Rick, I'm going to get your perspective on this before we take our first break. And Eric, you could stick around if you want. And if you got to go, you got to go, because I know you're a busy guy. But I want to get Rick's perspective on the fact that it was a few decades ago that the legendary Tommy Chong went to jail for selling a bong. Right. That's his story. And all that.
Yes.
Right. And here we are in 2022, and Eric Robichaud has a successful company of selling paraphernalia accessories, as he alluded to.
Paraphernalia is heroin needles. We sell accessories
To the cannabis world. So haven't we come a long way, Rick?
We have. When we look at so many states that still have nothing or very little, or they have, vape only regulations, and they don't allow THC percentages over a certain amount, or they restrict the milligrams, the distance that we still have yet to go, it's unmeasured. But where we've been, that we can certainly measure. And one of the ways we can do so is by looking at the commerce that we have now, especially Michigan sitting on a $2 billion cannabis industry on a regular this year itself. Our midway point, we're at 1.03 billion for the first half of 2022, and we have every reason to think we're going to hit 2. And that's all through traditional retail stores like CVS, like McDonald's. This is so mainstream that it's hard for people who never came up in that era to believe that it was ever illegal in the first place.
Absolutely. It is a whole new world of weed, as I like to say, on a fairly regular basis. Eric Robichaud, thank you so much for joining us. GreenGoddessSupply.com is how you find out about it. Again, you're invited if you want to hang. If you don't, no worries. We've got some great guests coming up. And you know what? I'm just going to leave it at that. We're a little late for our 4:20 break. I want to take our first break, and we'll come back on the other side with more ways for you to fund your cannabis business.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm going to sit down in my rented car. I'm going to jam it into drive. I'm going to head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on every night and day. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
It stands for Regulation Crowdfunding. And what it is, the SEC put together this plan after the Great Recession back in 2008, 2009, where we were bailing out Wall Street, you know, the big bailouts, too big to fail. So we're bailing out huge banks like Bank of America, we're bailing out Ford Motor Company, et cetera, while the little guys on Main Street are closing their doors. Oh, well. And there was so much backlash that initially under the Obama administration, they created this Reg CF plan, and it was so popular and it worked so well that under Trump, they doubled down on it and expanded the program. And what it does is it allows the average retail investor like you and me to be able to invest in pre-IPO companies, basically buy shares of companies.
This edition of Green Rush Live is supported by Canna Business Resources, helping you grow with Canna Business funding. Check them out at cannabusinessresources.com. Welcome back to the Eric Show. After all, every time you look at one of our videos, Eric Robichaud is there talking about his start engine and why it's legal and all that neat stuff. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Green Rush Live for Friday afternoon. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. Rick Thompson alongside this Friday. So good to see you as usual, Rick, from the fine state of Michigan. And you got a little body of water there somewhere, don't you?
Got a bunch of them, actually. You know, we call them the Great Lakes. You might have heard of that. Yeah.
I remember now. We've got the ocean. You've got the lakes. There are no sharks. There are no sharks in the lake, right?
Yeah. And it's also a little colder though. So
that's right. All right. We are joined this half hour. Eric decided to stick around for a little bit, and I appreciate that because there's actually another guy who has a background in, let's just say business and a specific type of business. And he's actually created a robot that'll grow cannabis for you inside. And it's called Anaboto. And the CEO and founder is Palme. Carl, welcome to Green Rush Live.
Thank you, Jimmy. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us about your robot that will grow indoors and the differentiators perhaps between what you've got and what the armoire has.
Yeah, so I mean, I started this company because I can't grow anything at home. If you give me any plant, I just kill it. And so being an engineer, being somebody who likes to solve problems with technology, I use my background in robotics and artificial intelligence to try to automate the full growing process. And so essentially the system, as you can see from this little thing on the right, has, or the left, depending on how you're looking at this, that has a lamp, it has a vision system, and it looks at how the plant is growing. And based on how it's growing, based on the visual cues, we can actually adjust the recipes. So regardless of where you are in Michigan, Massachusetts, wherever, we'll be able to adjust for that based on that and some other factors that we have. One of the things that I think is different, Eric, is we are using hydroponics, where I think the armoire is soil.
Yes.
And so, yeah, depending on who you talk to, I mean, people like hydroponics, people like soil. But I think at the end of the day, what is really exciting is that people are really interested in growing at home. And I think there's a larger proportion of people who are interested in, now that cannabis is becoming legal, of actually growing their own, just because it gives you more consistency. You have a lot more control over the cannabis that you're growing. But in a lot of cases, it needs to be really easy because people like me exist who just can't grow anything. And so we're trying to leverage technology as much as we can to make it as easy as possible for everybody.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got a black thumb too. I hate using that, but I kill plants too. Okay. And that's one of the things that intrigued me about both you guys, to be honest with you. Okay. The price point is a big difference between the two of you. Am I right? Carl, what does yours retail for?
So we're retailing it for $999, so $1,000 essentially.
Okay. And Eric, what does the armoire retail for?
The current version is $1,600.
There you go. And Carl, do you have like a training when you get one of these things, or is it check out the video or read the instructions? And by the way, nobody reads instructions anymore.
So nobody reads instructions, period. I mean, we attach the instructions and we get emails, but people look at the app. And so we have a mobile app. You need the app to get the machine started. And so the app actually holds your hand through the whole process. But one of the things that we really like, and when we designed this, we wanted to make it as easy as possible for anybody. And so we only have one button on the device. That's all you really have to do. And then we let the technology take over. So from your IP address, we can deduce your zip code. From your zip code, we can understand what kind of water you have. But really, we're taking cues from your environment and the vision system. But yeah, nobody reads the instructions. So we made it just a step-by-step process on the app to get going.
Tell us about your background in robotics, a field that is fascinating to me. I love science fiction, and anytime I see a robot that's actually functioning and doing something, it blows me away.
Yeah, so robots are incredible. I mean, my background, I've been in robotics for maybe 20 years, mostly in automating manufacturing sites. So making, things for airplanes or for cars. That gets boring after some time. Yes, robots are amazing, but it's the same arm just moving the same thing over and over and over again. And so for me, this is going outside of my level of comfort, making a consumer product, not an industrial product. There are several differences to that, but yeah, I mean, essentially it's the same technology, right? How do you use something that could do the same thing over and over and over again? But with artificial intelligence, you make it do intelligent things if it sees something different in the environment.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have enough intelligence to be artificial or not. But one of the first questions I asked both of you guys when I learned about these products, because it has a lot to do with the real boss of the household, let's just say. David Faraday calls his wife she who must be obeyed, has a very sharp nose. This is a very pungent plant. So I'm going to ask Carl first, how do you get rid of the pungent odor, or do you just embrace the odor in your living room or wherever you have your Anaboto?
No, so yeah, the odor is a thing, and my wife was very clear that if we didn't solve for the odor, there was not going to be a company, or I had to go find a different wife. So we spent a lot of time doing that. And so if you look at our system, the lamp where the shade is, we actually have an air filtration system there. And so with the temperature and with a bunch of stuff that's going on with the device, we can suck in the air and constantly filter it so that we can manage the odor as much as we can. There are differences in strains. Some of them are stinkier than others. But for the majority of what we're growing, our customers feel very comfortable with the amount of odor that they're getting from this. We haven't had anybody recluse the Anaboto from their living room to the basement yet. So I think we're doing well, but there's always more research that we can do in that space. And now that cannabis has become legal, there's a lot of companies doing a lot of solutions for this kind of air filtration.
Yeah, we're going to have to get to some of these states that don't allow home grow and do a show on that with some politicians, because it makes absolutely no sense to me that they banned the growing of a plant. I mean, that's a little overstepping, let's just say. Eric, I'm going to go back to you now and ask you the same question. And I'm fascinated again. You've actually told me an anecdotal story. And I wish you would share that. You know which one I'm talking about. Go ahead.
I actually don't. Remind me real quick which
story.
story.
So you told me you had one of your units in one of your customers' living rooms, and he had parties there and people over, and nobody realized that he was growing a plant that was so pungent, in this big
absolutely.
piece of furniture.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's ours is designed to be furniture and be designed to be seen, unlike tents that are people trying to stick in a basement or that sort of thing. It's designed to be seen. So our customers are putting them right in their living rooms and their dining rooms. And actually, so the story I told you is probably mine. I had a dinner party. I have 2 of them in my living room. And of course I do, because I'm testing. I actually had 3. See, the second one, I brought home to do, we have an unboxing video on our website, and I brought it home to do the unboxing, and Jen gave me the sort of hairy side eye, like, what is that? I'm like, oh, no, it's just for the unboxing video. It's not staying. That was 2 years ago. But anyway, so I brought a 3rd one home, but I just to test or whatever, then that one went back out. But we had some folks over, and we had no idea how they felt about cannabis. We weren't really sure. And so we just didn't say anything, and they had no idea. And it wasn't until right at the end, when they're getting ready to leave, it was a husband-wife couple. The husband says, I'm really into cabinetry and building and all that stuff. He's like, I noticed your cabinets, can I ask you a question about it? I'm like, sure. Oh yeah. And he's like, this is really, he's asking me about it. The door, there's no hinges. It comes off. And through dinner, we kind of found out that they were fine with cannabis. So then I wasn't worried about it. So I took the door off, and his eyes were like, oh my God, he had no idea that was in there. And you can't smell a thing. And people tell me all the time, because they know I'm growing. I have 2 plants going, and some of them, as soon as you open the door and they stick their head in, oh, wow, you get that strong skunky, but there's no smell on the outside. It's all contained. It's all contained, and we use carbon scrubbers and filters and stuff as well.
I'm amazed at both of your ingenuity. I really am. I think it's brilliant, and both are available. Carl, how many of these things? They're for sale, am I right?
They are.
And it's at anaboto.com.
It is anaboto.com. We have been selling a bunch of these in Massachusetts, mainly just because we're doing beta testing and things like that. Like Eric, I've been doing a lot of research and development in my house, and like him, it's been 3 years since I've had these in there. So it's fun. It's fun to see people's reactions. And I think one of the most important things that I think both Eric and I are doing is growing directly in our living room, right? I think this is something that we cannot be hiding. This doesn't belong in the basement. We have to have these conversations with people who are perhaps not as comfortable with cannabis, but like you said, Jimmy, it's a plant and it helps a lot of people. And so we have to have these conversations in the open. And so, but going back to your question, we have several in the field. By next week, we're probably going to have 75. A majority of our machines are being 3D printed right now, which is not a scalable system. But we are fundraising so that we can actually tool up and start selling thousands of these a month. We have a backlog of people all over the States. In Germany, Germany is a huge market that is about to legalize. We're getting a ton of demand from that. And so and that's why I think the crowdfunding bit is interesting, because this is how we're going to try to raise the money to tool up and make these.
So I'm hoping you monitored the first half hour, because Eric did a great job, I thought, of talking about the process. Have you begun that process yet, or are you still shopping for the right start engine, GoFundMe, seed invest? I mean, there's quite a few out there. Eric, you actually listed off 4 or 5 I hadn't even heard of. So do you have a plan yet, Carl?
We're doing what's called testing the waters. The platform that we chose was WeFunder. We chose WeFunder. It has, I think, the largest investor network. I also have a personal connection at WeFunder, so it was good to have somebody guide me through the process. And one of the things that I liked about WeFunder is we do have people who are interested in giving us some bigger checks. And what's nice about WeFunder is if you bring those bigger checks, you don't get a fee. You don't have to pay a fee for those bigger checks. And so for us being frugal, we wanted to definitely take as much of that check for us. But yeah, WeFunder has been incredible. Start Engine has also been very flexible. We talk to them a lot. There are a lot of platforms and there's a lot of pros and cons to all of them. But for us, WeFunder was the one where we landed.
And Eric has put in some incentives besides buy some stock if there's a certain level and all this. Do you have incentives for the public to actually get a tchotchke or something like that?
Yeah, so I think our incentive has to be aligned with trying to get our customers to buy several of these or buy them for their friends. So we're giving people discounts depending on how much they invest. And then if they invest a big amount, we are giving them some for free, or they can pick a friend that we can ship to. But if they invest a really big amount, we're inviting them to come into the office. We're going to develop a feature of their own, right? I mean, we're going to workshop it, we're going to develop it, and we're going to give all of our investors a Founders Edition Anaboto when it comes out. So, I mean, they have to buy it, but they're going to get a limited edition Anaboto that you can only get if you invest.
And are they getting stock, or is this what are they getting?
They are. So they're investing in what's called a safe note. So it's a simple agreement for future equity. It's what Eric talked about this. So they will get stock once the professional investors come in and they value the company. And if it meets a certain threshold, then they're going to get stock at whatever price the investors come at. But people who are investing early, there's something that's called a cap, and that's the valuation. And so we're hoping that people who invest very early on will get a huge upside when the bigger investors come in and they see all the machines that we've sold.
There you go. And it was great that you did the safe thing, because friend of Green Rush Live and Pro Cannabis Media, David Rabinovitz in the chat room, put it out there about 15 minutes ago when he heard it, because his brain goes immediately to, I know what that means. And he puts it right in the chat room. A shout out to David there. Eric, what are the incentives that you guys have put in place for your future investors?
Sure. We put together, it was a whole package of things. There was some time-based incentives. A lot of our incentives involve shares. Now, they're unlike the safe, they're actually getting shares. You invest, you get shares, day one, done. And so for us, what we did, we did some time-based incentives. So if you jump in within the first 48 hours, we gave up to, I forget now off the top of my head, it was either 10 or 15%. I think it was like 15% bonus shares. So if you bought 1,000 shares, you'd actually get, 1150 or whatever. And then after the first 48 hours, then if it was within the first week, then it went down to, 10% bonus shares. And then if it within the first month, it went down to, so we had some time based, then eventually they winnow out. There are check based, the size of the check, so up to, at 500, you get 1% bonus shares. If it's 2,500 or up, you get 2%, 3%, 5%. So the bigger the check, the more bonus shares you get. We have some product discounts, at certain levels, you can get, 10% coupon, good for an entire year off everything and anything in our store. Things. So we have, discounts off all products. And then at the higher levels, we also are doing the really nice lucite tombstones too, to commemorate your investment.
Right. And the tombstone, it's kind of like a plaque.
Right.
The word freaks people out.
It's like a trophy. It's like a trophy.
Yeah, it's a little acrylic. It's an acrylic.
Right.
Right. It's actually a corporate trophy. If you've been in corporate America, they give these out to employee of the quarter, employee of the month. Hey, thanks for coming, that sort of thing. I get that. And I've seen quite a few. I think I moved them a few times too. Let's just say. Guys, I'm going to go back to Rick here. What?
Oh, no, I just that a corporate entity would give someone a tombstone as a benefit.
That's what they're called.
I understand its phraseology, but it's just fun. It's fun to do this. Look, guys, let's try and sell some units for you here. Okay. Yeah. How many plants? How tall are the plants? And do we have daily or weekly requirements for maintenance by the particular owner? Let's start with Carl. How about your machine?
Yeah, so our machine is open. We went with an open design because I think part of our mission is trying to get people to have this conversation and seeing the plant and really living it and making it part of your life. I think to your question, we're seeing people on average get around 2 ounces of flower, but we've gone up to 3.5 ounces. And the tall and everything, I mean, that really depends on the strain. We try to adjust the height with brightness of lights and things like that. But really, it's about how much output you get. And for us, we're seeing on average 2 ounces, but we've seen up to 3.5. And then as far as the maintenance and the requirements, all the user really has to do is add water. So essentially, you just cycle the water once a week. The old water that you have, you can put on your potted plants, and the potted plants love that. And one of the things that we're starting to play with.
Do the potted plants get high from that? Sorry,
nope.
I couldn't resist.
Nope.
But
they actually love it. They love it. Yeah, they're nutrient happy. And in fact, a lot of people are putting their potted plants around our light just because it's very good for the plants. And so they're benefiting not only from the plant, but also from the nutrients that come from the water output.
What's the growing time period to get that 2 ounces, that 3 ounces?
It depends on the strain. On average, the ones that we're seeing is about 90 days. We've done some as quickly as 60 days and some that take up to 120 days, but that really is strain dependent.
Gotcha.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Eric, before you answer that question, hang on, I got to interrupt because we got a question here from our chat room. Ron wants to know, and I'm going to guess, what is the minimum investment? Eric, you go first because you're active right now, and Carl's still in the prepping stage. So what's the minimum investment for Green Goddess Supply?
Sure. For us, it's $285. And because they're 95 cents a share, that's basically 300 shares.
There you go. Okay. And Carl, have you figured out what's going to be the minimum for you guys?
$100.
Okay. Yeah. I love this industry. I really do. You know, I just do. And I don't know if anybody, I know there's nobody on this group that will remember the old Boston Patriots. That's right. The Boston Patriots actually existed before the New England Patriots. And the late owner of the Boston Patriots actually took his club public. Now, the stock was worthless, but the fans bought it up. And I know for a fact that my brother bought one of those because I remember seeing it as a kid. It was kind of a fun thing to put up on the wall that I'm a co-owner of the Boston Patriots, you know. Yeah. And I guess that was in the 60s though, guys, right? I mean,
right. Yes.
Early 60s, by the way. I just want to make sure that people know that's what happens when you get old. You have these weird thoughts in your head. All right. Rick, go ahead. You did great. Go ahead.
I still love, by the way, that sounds a lot like High Times current stock offerings, actually. Get a lot of fans to buy a totally useless piece of paper. Eric, how many plants? How tall? What is your yield? What's your maintenance schedule like?
Sure, absolutely. Can answer all that. So we have specs for a whole product line. So we have other models coming out of different sizes, dimensions, and so forth. What we're shipping right now, we call it the Armoire 60. And it's designed as a one plant system. People will ask us, can I put 2? Can I put 3? The real answer is once you get it home, you can do whatever you want with it. I mean, you own it, right? You can. We have people doing 2 or 3 plants, but we highly, highly, highly recommend not to. And so far, pretty much invariably, anyone who's done that ends up coming back and telling us, yeah, you were right. Because, well, I don't even have to go into the because. There are several reasons, and you get less optimal results. If you follow our protocol, and that's one of the things we've done, is we've just simplified this whole thing. We've dumbed it way down. We've invented our own protocol. It's not just a box with some lights and fans. It's our own proprietary light. But also we have our own grow protocol that makes it just stupid simple with just really, really simplified process. And if you follow our process, you're going to fill that box with one plant. We're going to touch all the sides and you're going to fill that box. So why would you want to try to put in a second or a third plant? Now you're just squeezing them out and everything. We will fill that box. Our public promise is a quarter pound, 4 ounces, in as little as 60 days. The reality is I average pretty much 6 ounces, and we have people pulling up to 8. And we have people rate, and I don't mean it's happened once. Like I've pulled 7.8. I don't know that we've ever had anyone pull more than a half pound in about maybe 75 or 80 days. I don't know that I've had anyone pull more than half a pound, but we have people that are getting 8 ounces or they're about 7.5, 8 ounces pretty consistently, pretty regularly. That'll depend on the strain and following our protocol. You follow our protocol, you're going to be happy. We don't follow our protocol. And basically what our ask or our requirement is as follows. It can be as simple as you water the plant once a day or every other day. You just have to water the plant. Ours is a soil system, so you do have to water it.
Gotcha.
That's pretty much it. My routine is about 15 seconds a day. I open the box, I pour my water in, I close my box, I go to work. Or some days I don't need to water it. I'm just off to work. It's pretty straightforward. And then there are some optional things that we recommend people do if you want to get bigger yields. You want to get those 6-7 ounces. There are some stress training and some things we will teach you how to do it. But that's, about 3 weeks in, we can teach you how to do it. Spend about 20 minutes, do a little stress training. If you don't want to do the stress training, then don't. Then you'll get, 2-3 ounces and, you don't have to do anything. But if you want to get those, 4, 5, 6 ounces, we'll teach you how to do it.
Scrogging in the closet. Yeah.
And we don't do scrogging, but we do LST, and we've developed our own process. Vince calls it the Ring of Fire protocol, to get we get really great results through it. Really great.
Do either of these come with seeds or clones, Carl?
We have been gifting seeds just because we're testing certain strains and we have to train the artificial intelligence. But we start everything from a seed.
There you go. Does the artificial intelligence take a hit anytime? I'm sorry. I'm thinking robots. I'm thinking,
See, that's
a robot get high
and get stoned, right? So
that's right.
No, that nobody's gonna take your ganj. And that's the nice thing about having the robot. But yeah, it's with the artificial intelligence. It's all about looking at kind of the same thing and then finding deviations. So that's why we've been starting with these seeds. It gives us a lot of consistency, and that's something that we can control for now.
Yeah, actually, we always recommend. Again, it's a box. Once you get it home, hey, you can do whatever you want with it, right? And we do have people growing, 5-6 month photos. We have people growing from clones. We have some of that going on, but we don't recommend it. We pitch this to, we do have pros, I run a 10,000, square foot canopy at work during, for the daytime. And then I come home, this is just for me. And we have people who know what they're doing, and that's great. But really, we're selling this just like Carl, I'm sure, we're selling this to not those early adopters, but to the late majority, to everybody else. And the person who doesn't know how to grow and doesn't want to have to get a PhD in botany to figure it out, right? And they want something simple and it just works.
Yeah, I don't want to be responsible for another living thing on earth. This is really another gap stop for me that I won't be doing it. So Eric, you've been able to tell people exactly where to go if they want to get to be part of this. If Carl, if people are interested in actually trying this out, you're looking for, are you looking for people to get in now and test yours out in Massachusetts?
Yeah. So if you go to anaboto.com, you can take a picture of the QR code. You can go to our page. If you are interested in learning more about what we're doing at WeFunder, you can go to wefunder.com/boundless.robotics. And and you can learn all about our terms in there as well.
There you go. Well, Carl and Eric, thank you. This is actually a lot more interesting than I thought it was going to be honest with you. And that goes to your personality.
We're going to be boring. Hey, Carl, I don't know what you're picking up
I didn't
here.
say boring.
I know. We should go on another Zoom.
I know, right?
So harsh to the guests.
He just told us he thought we were going to be boring. All right.
No. I just had no idea where it was going to go. Eric, you and I talked a few hours ago. I just wasn't sure where it was going to go. But I love that. And I love the fact that we've got companies that are really at the beginning stages of this process. And after the break, Peter Vogel, the CEO and founder of Leafwire, is coming on with us. And he's going to tell us about his experience with crowdfunding because it was successful for him. And he'll explain all that after this break. And at this break, I'm really hoping that we're going to take a look back at Sensei Night in Holyoke, Massachusetts. That's where I got to hang out the other night. And I got to tell you, it was a lot of fun. And there were people from like Colorado. People flew in from Colorado to go to Sensei Night in Holyoke, Massachusetts. They drove out from Massachusetts, from Boston, and they still attended it. It was really a great night. Don't go away. More of Green Rush Live coming your way next. Hi, everyone. I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young, and you're probably wondering, what am I doing on a growing show? After all, I'm a convicted plant killer. That's why I surround myself with these beautiful plastic babies. But now I have found the secret to all those people out there who just don't want to deal with growing a plant indoors or outdoors. You just don't have enough confidence. Hey, check out greengoddesssupply.com. That's where you'll find the armoire system. Basically, it's growing for dummies like me. Check it out. The armoire at greengoddesssupply.com. All right, Richie, another Sensei Night, another success for you guys. How important is it for you to make sure that you go to different parts of the state to get the word out?
Yeah, no doubt. That's what's on my mind right now. It's really important. For me as a market director of Sensei Magazine in Massachusetts, my focus is the Massachusetts cannabis community and the market, the industry here has been for years. That's how we met. And, early on, Sensei was really focused in the city of Boston and greater Boston. That's where the magazine went. That's where we did events. In the end, that's kind of where cannabis companies operated. But, fast forward 3 years, 2022, cannabis business is thriving all across the state, luckily for us. And the magazine is now getting transported and distributed across the state as well, all the way out west, Great Barrington, Holyoke. And so for us to do our first Sensei Night back since the pandemic in Holyoke out west here, past Worcester, in a new region for me even, feels good. And to have people pack it in and all these companies show up, and it's just going to help us really be the full Massachusetts market, not just the greater Boston area. And
it's great, man. That's great. So are you pleased? I mean, let me tell you, there are a lot of people came out here from Cape Cod, from Fall River. I mean, people took over 2 hours to get out here for that. Yeah. What's the draw? Or is this?
Yeah, those people that you mentioned, Veridity, Elevated Roots, Cape Cod Cannabis, all these different businesses down there, Solar Therapeutics, they have been to these guys have been to a bunch of events. So at this point, they know it's going to be a killer show, great music, cool art, and but mostly their friends, and that's what I love about the Massachusetts cannabis industry is that I don't know anybody that works ancillary or vending or that has operations, owns a company, owns a license that don't love each other and aren't friends and don't ultimately get together, go on a boat, go to the beach. These kind of things are happening. So they're going to come out to support me because we're friends, but they're also going to come out to support their other friends and meet new ones. And, so I think that's the answer, and hopefully also for Holyoke and for the Western Mass market, they're here because they're excited to see it grow and they're interested to see what this is like. I know that's why I'm here, so I think that might have been the draw too, but yeah.
Live from Holyoke, I'm Jimmy Young, Pro Cannabis Media's founder, and I'm hanging out with Richie Guerra from Sensei Magazine, and it's not just a Sensei Night, it's his birthday night, ladies and gentlemen. Happy birthday, Richie.
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate it.
What are you now, 28?
Thank you. No, I'm 23.
There you go. Very good. Congratulations. How many times have you been 23? That's what I want to know.
About 11. Yep.
That's Richie Guerra. I'm Jimmy Young. We'll have more of the show. Don't go away. Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it could make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems, whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
This edition of Green Rush Live is supported by Canna Business Resources, helping you grow with Canna Business funding. Check them out at cannabusinessresources.com. And welcome back to the live edition of Green Rush, the business of cannabis talk show, every Friday afternoon on the Pro Cannabis Media Network. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of PCM. And a reminder, please, to like, share, and subscribe to all the programs that Pro Cannabis Media works so hard so that you, the audience, you, the Canna Curious out there, can actually get informed about all your buying decisions, whether it is for a business, a license, or you're just going out to the local dispensary to get a pre-roll. Rick Thompson, the executive director of Normal in Michigan, is our guest host today. Rick, what are your impressions of the show so far? Because I never get a chance to do any debrief with you.
Well, first of all, it's been a lot of fun. There's been a lot of smiles and a lot of laughs, which makes for good video. But more importantly, what's some inspirational stories of people that have followed their passion. They found something that interested them. They pursued it. And again, they're in an industry that's emergent, which allows, passion to really be profitable at a certain point. So I love to see entrepreneurs who really have the world all laid out in front of them. It's exciting to see.
And another success story and an entrepreneur is Peter Vogel, the founder and CEO of Leafwire, the LinkedIn for weed. And thank you so much for joining us, Peter, because you've had a successful crowdfunding raise, correct?
Yes, I've done a crowdfunding raise. I've done also, seed rounds, Series A rounds. Over the last 10 years, I've done probably 4 or 5 different rounds. So I've done a little bit of all of it.
There you go. Well, I definitely want to come back to you to get your Seed Invest experience story and the results and all that neat stuff. But I do want to introduce Jahaira Reyes from Canna Business Resources. We're going to call her Jay. Hi, Jay.
Hi, how are you?
Good. And thank you so much for joining us. And alongside is a guy that's very familiar with the Canna Business Resource Group, and his name is Frank Romita. He is the managing partner of SnapCapital. Frank, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us, Jimmy. I appreciate that.
Okay, so let's start with Frank. What is SnapCapital?
Thanks. SnapCapital is a origination firm. We work as intermediaries, and we help companies in the cannabis space source and procure capital. That's what we focus on.
There you go. And line up, because I'm guessing there's quite a few people out there looking for this right now. Am I right?
Yeah, we've been seeing quite a bit of demand in the capital markets right now. a lot of stuff in the range of commercial real estate and equipment leasing, and we're seeing a lot, and we're getting a lot of traction in and around inventory financing and AR in the space. So we're seeing the markets really warm up to cannabis a bit here.
There you go. All right, Jay, here's your big 15 seconds of fame here. Canna Business Resources. What is it? How does it work? And what's it all about?
So we are the leading provider of unique financing solutions for the cannabis and CBD businesses in North America. We offer a full suite of non-dilutive capital resources for all cannabis operators.
Wow, that is very cool. And where are you located, Jay?
We're located in Manhattan.
I've heard of Manhattan.
Yes.
That's in that Big Apple city down there, just south of Boston and north of New Jersey. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Frank, I'm guessing that your phone's ringing off the hook. Jay, we'll go to you. I'm going to ask you the same question. Are you getting incoming inquiries on a regular basis, or are you out there, pounding the pavement and trying to talk to as many people as possible?
It's a little bit of both, to be quite honest with you, Jimmy. We're seeing a lot of we do a lot of outreach as well, but our conversion on that is quite high, and we are having a lot of inbound referral requests for financing. So it's a little bit of both. And yeah, absolutely. This is a very capital intensive market for operators, and from commercial real estate and equipment, there's a lot of money that needs to be invested in infrastructure, and that's where we try to fit in. We try to bridge that gap, and we try to help provide capital to these markets that are largely underserved by traditional lenders.
Gotcha. I think we've unfortunately, Jay has left the building, as they say, but I'm guessing she will come back in at some point. Peter, walk us through your experience, if you don't mind, with the crowdfunding initiative that you did. I know you use Seed Invest. Am I right?
Yes, correct. So we use a Seed Invest, and they're similar to Start Engine. They're one of, I'd say, the top kind of 4 or 5 crowdfunding sites out there. It's not always easy to even get on those sites. A lot of the bigger sites, Seed Invest told us they only accept about 1% of inbound applicants they get.
Yeah.
They're very picky. They don't want to put people up unless it's a company they truly believe in, because they're basically promoting companies to their base, right? So if you get a bunch of crappy companies up there, their base all of a sudden is going to go somewhere else and say, these deals are not good. So first, I would tell people, it's not easy. It's not even easy to get on those sites. It takes work. And it does, a crowdfund does take a considerable amount of work in terms of you have to have your finances really lined up, and you have to do a financial review, not a full audit, but a financial review that can cost, up to $5,000 to complete, take about a month. You have to fill out some documents, do a bunch of documentation. And then even when you get live, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of marketing. And they say you need to spend about 20 to 30% of what you want to raise on marketing to raise that money. So not everyone does. A lot of people get to, 10% of their goal, half to their goal. Some get double their goal. So it's definitely, it's something that a lot of people go to when the markets get, especially when the markets get tougher. Like they are right now. But I would say that it's not just you throw something up and you're done. It's definitely work. It takes time, effort, money, and it will take someone's time to kind of monitor it for a couple of months and do marketing and kind of really watch it. And
yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not trying to downplay it completely. We did raise almost $1 million on Seed Invest. So it was down to the wire a bit, that it took to the last week or two to get there.
Pardon my ignorance. What happens if you don't reach your goal in crowdfunding?
It depends on the site. Different sites have different rules. Some of them have minimums where if you don't, say if you're trying to raise $1 million and you don't get to 600K or something, those limits are typically set beforehand. And if you don't reach that, then you don't get any of the money. And that's also Seed Invest is doing that to protect their members. They want to make sure you're going to get enough to functionally operate your company for some period of time. So they're trying to protect their members' investments. So it's meant to be in their best interest. That can make it very challenging for the fundraiser though, who may be happy with raising less than they meant to, but you do have to reach a certain limit. Oftentimes, once you reach that limit, you get all of a sudden 20% more in the next week because everyone sees that you reached that limit. So it's this. And then when you announce you have 3 days left, all of a sudden you might get another 20%. So there's the FOMO, like everyone knows, everyone puts everything off until you have to do it. So you have, tons and tons of investors who won't act until there's no more time left. So that it can be a very stressful experience for the fundraiser who may run a campaign for 2 months. And then the last 2 weeks, you get 50% of what happens or more.
Just for the record, Jay is communicating with me, but she lost her Wi-Fi. And we all know you can't go on Zoom if you're going to lose your Wi-Fi, right? So she apologizes. That being said, Frank, let me ask you, do you have any experience with crowdfunding with any of the clients you have?
No, we don't actually use crowdfunding as a source of capitalizing our clients, but I actually did pick up on something that was pretty interesting that Peter mentioned about having the reviewed financial statements, and just to throw a comment in on that, to Peter's point, yeah, that's something that we've actually seen. We've seen, we are seeing lenders, including community banks, come around, and some credit unions come around to lending in the cannabis space, but with these higher tier lenders, we're often seeing, requirements that either they have audited statements or reviewed statements. Self-prepared statements isn't going to cut it in that area of lending. So yeah, that's something that's definitely worth entertaining, and having those reviewed statements. It would probably improve the yield that you'd probably get, and improve the number of lenders that we would be able to shop the deal around to.
There you go. Okay, that's great. I got a few more questions here, and it has to. Do you fund pre-revenue companies, really early stage companies?
Yeah, we definitely. That's an interesting one, Jimmy. There's a lot of people trying to come into the cannabis space. A lot of startups. We do work with some startups, not a lot. We don't take them all on. We do have some lenders that will fund startups to a degree. But there are a few caveats to that, right? It's really about the operators and being properly capitalized and having a real roadmap to success. And oftentimes, we will see a lot of these companies in the startup phase trying to stretch the amount of capital that they can get, and they're very undercapitalized, or they don't have a great plan to get there. And those are the ones that are just too difficult to work with. But the ones that have brought in or raised equity, yeah, absolutely. If they're pre-revenue, we most definitely can to a degree, but the funding is largely going to be ABL based, since there's no revenue there. So we need the asset to really have a backstop to the loan. So in that case, if it's pre-revenue, we're really probably going to be limited to either real estate or equipment type plays.
Gotcha.
So there has to be collateral to back up the loan.
Right.
Yeah, without revenue, most definitely. Yeah, we're going to look for collateral. I don't think I would get. There's probably no real option that we have in our lending base for non-collateral, no collateral type loans for pre-revenues for sure.
And I've found by speaking with Cannabis Business Resources and companies like yourself, Frank, and a lot of others, that it's pretty consistent. Most of the lenders in the cannabis industry, unless you have been in business, have at least 12 months of revenue, and it'd be a couple $100,000 worth of revenue, you typically kind of don't qualify for a non-collateral loan. Is that what kind of ring true?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would most definitely probably ring true. And even if you did, you're probably not going to want to pay the rate anyhow. So, I think that's something else to consider. But yes, most definitely, I think if we're going to be in a smaller revenue range, we're going to be looking for clients that are looking for support with some piece of collateral. Most definitely.
Rick, I'm sure you have a million questions for these two established people on our show. I'm going to throw it over to you. You can ask, obviously, about that convertible debt versus equity funding, because this is all the stuff that people are trying to tell me. And I'll be honest, it goes right over my head. I just don't get it. I just want to produce programming.
Well, I can tell you that here in Michigan, we've seen a spate of closures. Loom Cannabis, which is one of our top retail chains just closed 4 locations this week. We have a cannabis testing lab, which is failing right now, which you wouldn't think that's an industry that would have problems like this. So Frank, are you offering real estate investment trusts? You mentioned leasebacks and things like that. Are you into that type of an arrangement for finances?
Yeah, I will say, one thing that we try to pride ourselves on, Rick, if I can just walk it back a little bit, is there are most definitely many REITs in the space that are doing these sale leasebacks. It's been really a strategy that's been leveraged quite a bit in the space. The problem with that is you lose the asset on the balance sheet, and that creates a problem a little bit later for additional capital raises. So we work with, our primary commercial real estate lenders are generally what we would call cannabis friendly, but not cannabis lenders. It's a term that I like to use, and they're lenders that have a long standing in just general commercial real estate, but they have warmed up to the idea of cannabis. And that's something that we've tried to do at SnapCapital, is not necessarily bring in lenders or introduce lenders to potential clients that everybody already knows, rather warm up additional lenders and create value to our clients by introducing new parties, people that might not have exposure to the cannabis market, and introduce them to good quality credit plays. So I would say that we probably fund the majority of our commercial real estate deals outside of REITs, and we generally are not doing sale leasebacks, but that's something that we've seen a lot of.
Yeah, it seems like a big vulnerability when you trade away all of your physical assets and put all of your capital into one single investment firm. Peter, you mentioned, I know that you have a national focus, and we talked a little bit about successful companies trying to raise funds, but also how difficult it is out there. Are you seeing all across the United States a rash of companies not being successful any longer where they were 1 or 2 years ago? Or is that something that's isolated just into the mature markets at this point?
I would say it's pretty widespread. And it's interesting you asked about nationally. So we actually now are a global. So Leafwire has members from more than 100 countries, right?
That's excellent. Congratulations.
We just found that out a couple weeks ago, and we were kind of blown away that it was 100 countries. But so I get, as the CEO of Leafwire, I get messages constantly from people who are trying to fundraise all throughout the United States. And I get both from people running dispensaries, running grows, and ancillary companies. And I got messages from people in Portugal. I think Jamaica was the other one. So there's people all over the world actually sending me messages asking if I can help them find an investor. And I usually, tell them to connect with people on Leafwire to post what they're looking for. Like I can't personally introduce every single person to, every investor I know. Right. And it is tough out there right now. I think a lot of the funds are holding back, either don't have money or they're holding back their money for follow-on investments right now, because their companies that they already invested in are hurting as well. So the existing funds are hurting a little bit. And that's why I think, the crowdfunding is kind of appealing to people right now. And some of the crowdfunding companies I've talked to have said they're having their biggest year ever right now. And I think it's because a lot of the markets have dried up. And we work with a lot of different lenders on Leafwire, and lenders are telling me the same thing. Like they're hearing from lots of people that I think these times are, great for, the lenders who can help people out right now. So I think it's a worldwide thing. One last thing, I have heard though that some of the investors are a little more attracted to kind of like the picks and shovels plays right now, because they're more worried about the price of flower and the competition with all the licenses. And they see the picks and shovels, the technology plays, things like that, as a little less risky, in that it's not 100% dependent on, the price of flower going up and down. It's not dependent on regulation changing. It's not dependent on, the state next door opens that you just got a license in, and all of a sudden your license might be worth half what it was, because all of a sudden there's a state 20 miles away that's going to, have another 1,000 stores. So that's one thing I have seen, is that some of the ancillary companies have had a little more success over the last year versus some of the actual plant touching.
Frank, I'm curious, are you seeing a lot of new businesses seeking financing, or are you doing a lot more refinancing of existing businesses to sort of keep them afloat? What's the mix on that?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question, Rick. I would probably say that we're seeing a good mix of that, truthfully. A lot of last week or so, we've had a pretty good intake on some good quality companies that are running a very tight ship. They're not carrying any debt. They've raised the money. They've been operating on an EBITDA positive, so they've been operating on a very lean basis. Those are nice deals to obviously work on when you don't have too much hair on it. But yeah, we're also seeing those companies that come in, that have $18 million of real estate debt at 15+%, and they're trying to recap that out at a lower rate. I mean, we see those all the time. Like those aren't rare deals. And another point that Peter made about the tightening of the markets, we are seeing that. We work with family offices, hedge funds, and specialty lenders such as Canada Business Resources as well. And what we're often seeing now is, I'll give you a good example. One very prominent family office has pivoted, and they've pivoted to doing floating rate deals. So that's something I haven't seen before. So with the global macroeconomic situation that's taking place and the rising rates, they don't want to carry the risk of a floating rate anymore, of a fixed rate anymore. Right. So we have, floating rates and non-call periods, stuff that wasn't really in terms and covenants that weren't really around prior to. So we are definitely seeing a mix of that as well.
That's fascinating. I'm curious too to know on an international basis, you both mentioned that where are we seeing the biggest growth opportunities now? Germany clearly is about to explode as the largest market in Europe, but Mexico's made a lot of waves with some news about legalizing things. We've seen some Central American countries, Latin American, even some African nations too getting involved. What's the hottest foreign market right now?
I can jump in first. We're spending some time partnering with some companies over in Europe, because I believe that Europe, based on the amount of wealth in Europe and established kind of businesses, I think gives them a little bit of a head up in terms of developing a lot bigger economies faster in the cannabis industry. Germany, like you mentioned, I think is going to be huge. There's a lot of other big countries over there.
Spain with Cannabis, exactly. Yes, right.
Yeah, Spain has been pretty active. In the UK, eventually, I realize there's some hiccups there, but that'll be a huge market when England goes legal. So I think the European countries in general represent as a whole kind of the biggest opportunity.
Frank, what about you on an international basis? What are you seeing?
Yeah, we predominantly work on credit deals that are in North America, truthfully, but we have fielded some inquiries recently from Mexico, actually. But the challenge there, Rick, is we really need to have, for our lending network and our lending base, we really need to have a footprint in North America, whether it's going to be Canada or the United States. So that's really what we're our niche is, but we are definitely seeing an uptick in Mexico as well. And I think that's pretty interesting to see.
I got a question from the chat room. I want to throw it out there because right over my head. Bruce wants to know, is cannabis stock a good buy for medium or long term? And we all know that they've been going up and down, all the time. But there's a gamble now because in the federal government, we're hearing that they may actually be introducing some kind of a reform bill in the Senate, perhaps as early as next week. Needless to say, stocks go up and down like temperature does. So is it looking at it from an investment, guys? And I'm sure you're doing investments. I'm not. So I'm going to ask you, Frank or Peter, to answer that one. And Rick, you too.
Go ahead, Rick.
I'm happy to take the first stab at that. I will say this. When it comes to the capital markets, it's really difficult to know which way that those things will trade, especially in the current conditions that we have. I'm Canadian, and I've seen I had the same mindset when it wasn't legal here, and thinking that when the markets legalized it federally, that that it would just be, kind of a floodgate open in terms of the stock market. And it really wasn't the case. A lot of it got baked in. And when federal legalization came around, it was, it almost just seemed to flow the other way. So it's really difficult to say. And I think the bigger question and concern is really what's happening to the overall global macroeconomic environment, and probably a little bit less about the cannabis itself. So that's really tough to say. I don't know how much of the current valuation is baked in the way that these things are trading now relative to having federal legalization, let's just say next month, and if things are really going to change. That's really difficult. I think it's a little bit of a crapshoot in my opinion.
I don't think that's going to happen either, just for the record. Peter, is there any other industry that's as volatile as cannabis stocks right now?
I think crypto is worse.
Oh, that's true.
I can tell you as a guy who has put some money into crypto and watched it up and down, and I've sold some. I should have sold a lot more at one point. That's been even worse. I think the cannabis. So first of all, we keep hearing we're about to go into a recession that could cut the economy by 20%. So the stock market will likely go down. There'll likely be another rate increase. That's probably going to make the stock market go down as well. It's probably a great time to buy in about 6 months and then do that for the long term, assuming that cannabis industry is not going away, but picking 2, 3, 4 of the most stable MSOs out there, putting some money in those and just holding onto it for 20 years. I think longer term is probably the play. If you need the money in the next year or two, I wouldn't put it in because it's going to be pretty rocky for a while.
I think I'd agree with that too. I'll say that the Canadian exchange too, which is where you have to go to most of your investments in the cannabis industry, because most of them are not listed in the American Stock Exchange. Most people are not comfortable going to the Canadian exchange. I've been advising people to stick with ancillary industries as opposed to going directly into plant touching industries right now. The whole nation is experiencing a race to the bottom as far as cannabis pricing goes. It's going to be difficult to see who's going to survive in 6 months. Mergers and acquisitions are just so frequent now. It's difficult to say, as someone I invest with now is going to be the same name or the same company or have the same CEO in 6 months. And frankly, I'm very picky about where my money goes, and I don't want my invested dollars to get into the hands of someone who I don't agree with as far as their philosophy regarding cannabis.
Yeah. Hey, look, we're at the bottom of the half hour now, guys. I always do this. Actually, I'm gonna give David Robichaud credit because he always invites the guests that are on. If they want to stick around, they can. But we respect your day, even though it is Friday afternoon. If you have to run, I get it. We do have a member of a bank coming on next. Brandon Curran is with Main Street Bank in Marlborough, Massachusetts. That is now a cannabis-friendly bank, and I think that's fascinating unto itself. So we'll hear from him as well. But if either of you guys want to stick around, you certainly can. If you don't know Leafwire, go on leafwire.com, please, and you'll love it. You'll connect with good people in the cannabis space. And Peter, I've always appreciated everything you've done for us. We go back a ways now, don't we?
Dude, I've probably been on now 4 or 5 times, I think, over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I love that. You're a regular, and I appreciate that. Yeah. Appreciate it. Say hi to Mike too. Frank, it's up to you. If you could stay, great. If you can't, no worries. You'll stay?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for having us. I appreciate that.
All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to bring in Brandon, and we're going to keep it going on Green Rush Live on a Friday afternoon. Don't go away. This edition of Green Rush Live is supported by Canna Business Resources, helping you grow with Canna Business funding. Check them out at cannabusinessresources.com. Hi, everyone. I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young, and you're probably wondering, what am I doing on a growing show? After all, I'm a convicted plant killer. That's why I surround myself with these beautiful plastic babies. But now I have found the secret to all those people out there who just don't want to deal with growing a plant indoors or outdoors. You just don't have enough confidence. Hey, check out greengoddesssupply.com. That's where you'll find the armoire system. Basically, it's growing for dummies like me. Check it out. The Armoire at greengoddesssupply.com. Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it could make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems. Whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it actually will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
Welcome back to the final half hour of Green Rush Live, our regularly scheduled live business of cannabis talk show every Friday afternoon from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. We've been really live in this slot now for about 18 months, and we're really starting to see more active chats in our chat room. And again, I appreciate it. As the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, I'm Jimmy Young, and I really cherish every person who not only likes, shares, and subscribes to all of our content, but even those that are out there who might remember when I had talent and I was a sportscaster and I had a job and a paycheck. And Brandon Curran from Main Street Bank is with us, and he can vouch for me. Brandon, you were a fan, weren't you?
Jimmy, honestly, I always thought that you'd be interviewing me and I'd be playing for the New England Patriots. I never thought that you'd be interviewing me for a cannabis spot on a podcast, but you know what? I'll take it, man. And like I said, back in the 90s, big fan, loved it, watched all the time. So
appreciate that.
Here we are. It's all come full circle.
There you go. There you go. Rick Thompson, you've heard those stories too before, I know. And Rick is with us as well from Michigan. He's our Michigan correspondent on Weed Talk News. And if you want to see real talent in action, hang on. After this show, the Weed Talk News for the week will be running. Elena Pinto is our anchor. Rick Thompson's our Michigan correspondent, and he does a great job. He's entertaining, informative, and he's insightful. And I might add, his show streams live on Pro Cannabis Media on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern. Am I right?
You are right. Jazz Cabbage Cafe. We are in season 6 of Jazz Cabbage Cafe, by the way.
There you go. And he does a nice little talk show about the whole scene in Michigan. And I think that's one of the most fascinating things about this business. And even now, when we're hearing rumblings in DC about federal reform is coming or whatever, I don't think legalization is, but some kind of federal reform might be introduced on the U.S. Senate floor this week, which it'll be fascinating unto itself. But every state has different rules and regulations. So you want to get state by state reports. And that's one of the things that I'm most proud of about Weed Talk News, that we've got coast to coast cannabis coverage and insight from people who have been in that space now for a couple of years in that space. Brandon, how did Main Street Bank become a friendly cannabis bank?
It's interesting you say, Jimmy. So I myself have been in the cannabis business in Massachusetts now for closing in on, I guess, 4 years, which the people out in Denver, the people out in, Oregon and California, they're laughing at me, that's a baby, that's infancy. Out here on the East Coast, that's about as long as you can be in the business, right? I want to say Century Bank got into the pool on the banking side probably 6 or so years ago with Paul Evangelista in that group. And, they did a great job. It was only medical, the only licenses that were available at the time. And, those guys got into the program and that they're still doing it. They're now over at Needham Bank. And those guys do a great job. But, Main Street is in the pool. We've been in it now for closing in on 3 years. I've recently switched over from another cannabis friendly bank. I would say Main Street's more cannabis forward than cannabis friendly. And what I mean by that is a lot of banks will take, things that kind of fall in their lap, like, oh, this guy does a bunch of commercial lending with us and, he wants to get into cannabis and, great, we'll kind of take his business, right?
Yeah.
But Main Street's very cannabis forward, and it was kind of like, okay, you can get out of the dark closet and you can, go to conferences and do podcasts and things like that. And it was, to me, wildly refreshing. So, when you look at a bank, right, a bank's a bank, and I know the guys that you had on previously, they had 10 different ways to Sunday of, funding cannabis ventures and things like that. And they had a lot of, resources and a lot of things available to them that, a community bank's not going to have, right? We're kind of very vanilla, as is every bank, in the cannabis space in Massachusetts. And, I know you mentioned everything kind of going right over your head, right? And like, that's the risk you run with a lot of those things. Some people just kind of like, hey, tell me, what it is, put it in a neat box. I want to know that I can walk into the bank. I want to know that they're, an NCUA federal credit union, or I want to know that they're FDIC insured. I want to know that you have, 10 or 12 branches and a couple $1 billion in assets. And, people get that comfort level. I think what brought Marlboro to Main Street Bank to the table was they have a very entrepreneurial spirit, right? And they have a very deep footprint in that Metro West market. I know that you live, in the area. And, that entrepreneurial spirit really led the bank to, to cannabis, you know what I mean? So, and again, we had clients that were, in other lines of business that got into cannabis and, hey, gee, can you bank us? And, we looked around and, at the time, Main Street looked around and, gee, it makes sense. Let's kind of get into this. Other banks are doing it. And, if you mitigate the risk, from a compliance standpoint, you can eventually get the board, of the bank comfortable with it to a certain level, right? They're not always going to be as comfortable with it as, opening a Jersey Mike's or a Dunkin' Donuts, but it's still cannabis. It's still federally illegal. I hear it every single day, right? But it's a growing market. It's a growing need. And, we want to serve the community. We want to serve our market, whether, you're selling donuts or you're selling cannabis.
Yeah. Rick, what's the situation with banks in Michigan?
We have a wonderful relationship with some of the banks here. We have several different lenders that are focused on commercial entities. Here's the problem that we have in Michigan, though. Some of those banks that are willing to float loans to commercial entities are not willing to float loans to people in the cannabis industry for things like homes and cars and personal extension loans. So what we're seeing is that those people seem to be more of a risk to those cannabis friendly banks. Cannabis forward banks. I like that much better than cannabis friendly.
We will lend to employees of cannabis companies for mortgages. So if you're a W-2 employee of a cannabis company or you're an owner of a cannabis company, we will do mortgage lending to you.
See, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and we will bank the employees gladly. And an issue that we're coming up with a lot lately is an employee of a dispensary is at a Bank of America or is at a Chase or is at another bank, and they're seeing checks come from Air Wellness or Curaleaf or whoever it be, and they're saying, gee, these are cannabis related, income. We can't have you. You have 14 days to get out, right? So now picture me and my wife, right? We have 1,000,001 ACHs coming out of our account every day, our mortgage, our kids' school, our everything, our lifeline, right? And they just come to you and go, hey, you have 14 days to leave, right? So if you work in the cannabis business and you're looking for a safe place to bank, you can come to a cannabis friendly bank in Massachusetts, and we will bank you, and we will take your employees as well.
Now, Rick, in your case, can a Michigan person get a mortgage in a Massachusetts bank?
I'm certain that's true. I'm certain that they could. I know that there are out-of-state financing options that are available all over the place. And some of the real estate people that you work with are not from Michigan either. They're doing some of these larger loans that come from New York or Chicago, any of those places. So.
Yeah. All right.
I would have to check on our lending out of state, where we are a community bank. I don't want to outreach, or outstep my bounds, but I know that we do lend in state to, cannabis companies here for their employees for, mortgages and things along those lines as well. So,
well, with 230 odd dispensaries now in Massachusetts, there's a lot of
and growing
people, and growing. There's a lot of people who are getting paychecks from the industry. Right.
100%. Yep.
And I think we've all, I call it, popping your cherry when a bank shuts down your account as a business person. And I put it, when they shut me down, I put it into a credit union. I'll give them a plug, Greenwood Credit Union down in Rhode Island. Friendly. It was a personal referral from someone in the cannabis business to that credit union. So the power of the personal referral to me is the biggest and best referral you could get for your business or your service. You guys know that, right, Brandon?
100%. And being a community bank, that's our lifeblood, right? So it's basically, hey, you know what? I talked to so-and-so down the street and they bank with you guys and they have wonderful things to say about you. And, the next thing you know, your phone's ringing. And the cannabis community is very, very much like that. I know you were mentioning the event at Sensei Wednesday night, and, I obviously saw you there and, the whole deal. And you walk in and it's a small community and word travels fast. And if you do a good job,
right,
you really don't have to do a lot of work to win relationships. You really need to pick up your phone. You need to answer people's phone calls. You need to call people back. And you know what? If it's good news or bad news, just tell me. Just pick up the phone and tell me. I just don't want things to go into a black hole and never get back to me. You know what I mean? So that to me is kind of what I pride myself on. And that's kind of what I've always, based my business model on as well.
So you use a phone to actually talk to people?
I actually like to talk to them. I'm like you.
So
So you get me in a room together, there's not enough oxygen, for the both of us. You know what I mean? But it's, I love it, so.
Hey, Rick, I got to go back to you a little bit. What is the biggest challenge in Michigan? Is it simply what you said? To me, if you're starting to lend money to someone or not lend money to someone, to me, that's an injustice in many ways. It really bothers me when I hear that.
Yeah, it bothers us too when we see hardworking individuals that they clearly have a good track record as just citizens, right? And then they happen to work in the cannabis industry and they're discriminated against. But I think when you talk about the biggest damper on the cannabis industry in Michigan, it's the number of communities that participate, because every community that already said yes to cannabis businesses already has all their slots filled. And anytime a new city even whispers that they might be interested in it, there's a plethora of attorneys that just descend upon it in order to do that. And Brandon, from a lending perspective, it's difficult to know if a city is going to allow 2 dispensaries or if a city is going to allow 12. The potential for success is very different in those scenarios, right?
100%. I think it has a lot to do with the municipality too, right? So I live in Waltham, for example. Waltham's a community of, say, 65,000 people. I want to say we're slated to have 4 licenses. We have Bentley University here. We have Brandeis. We have a number of colleges. There's like 8 or 10 hotels. And if you go down Moody Street or Main Street, it's a similar type demographic and size to like, we abut Newton. And I think Newton, Jimmy, is what, like 100,000 people or something like that.
Well, it was when I grew up. It's down to about 85 now, I believe.
Yeah. And if you look at Newton, they have, Ready and Garden Remedies and Ascend. And I want to say they have 4 now anyway. So, I mean, to that point, Rick, right, I guess it really depends on the municipality and the I would say like almost how affluent that community is and what kind of money's there, right? So, if you want to take and you want to pepper in 14 or 15 or 18, dispensaries in Springfield, yeah, you're 100% compressing their profitability, compressing their, number of foot traffic coming into the store, for sure. But if you're in a Newton where there's 88,000 people, and colleges all over the place, I think you certainly could sponsor and definitely could float, 5 or 6 dispensaries, no problem.
Yeah. Look, how many liquor stores are there in Newton? How many liquor stores are there in Waltham?
Dozens.
Right. I mean, to me, it's an easy target when you run up against the stigma. And I do want to talk about that for a second here. We're all in this space. We're all passionate. We all know the stories. Cannabis saved my life. Cannabis changed my life. And yet everywhere you go, you still are coming up against people that don't want to have anything to do with either you or your business or loan you money or any, they just don't understand it. Now, we know that this is happening at the federal government too. One thing that changes most people's minds, and I interviewed a guy this week, I'm going to tell you who it is. It's Raymond Chang. He's the CEO of Agrify, a publicly traded company on NASDAQ. Okay. And the reason why he got into the cannabis space after running 6 other companies is the fact that his mother-in-law was sick and he saw how it helped her get through her cancer. And we've all heard these stories. Now I'm going to relate to you a little story about Aaron Smith. He's the executive director of the NCIA. I was at an event with him. Rick, I know you know him, right? Everybody knows him. Right. And I was at an event with him in Albany because New York, of course, is a new market and NCIA is doing a little membership dog and pony show. And he gave a great little like rah-rah speech, like a Bo Schembechler, if you will, speech, right? About how all of us that are in the cannabis industry have an obligation to educate the public about this plant. And I found it really enlightening in many ways because, if you go to the trade shows like we did, or the nights like Sensei had the other night, you're surrounded by like-minded people.
Sure.
That's really not where, it's great you could do business among like-minded people. It's refreshing, I can tell you that. But the real world is not. How much of a fight, Brendan, do you have, or how difficult is it when you tell people, yeah, I'm in the bank, but I'm in the cannabis space?
It's funny you say. So my wife is one of my biggest fans. She would have to be married to me, right? So it's, at the end of the day, she shared my post, that I was going to be on her show on, Facebook and a couple of other, venues. And, she got some sly, unfortunate remarks back. And, I know you and I kind of talked about this, a couple of times one off. And, like I said, I started Nutrisystem back in March and I lost it, but I actually at the same time stopped drinking alcohol. And I'll drink a couple of seltzers and I have a couple of gummies and I wake up the next day and I feel like $1 million, right? There's no calories, there's no sugar, you feel fantastic, right? And I've been preaching this to everybody out there and everybody's like, some people are like, that's great, that's awesome, that's wonderful. And then other people kind of like step back, right? And they're like, gee, I didn't know you did that or use, and you kind of get like exactly, right? So, my kids go to a Catholic school, right? And you're kind of like, what do you do for work? Hey, I do banking, right? You don't really elaborate much more on it, but I'm
a media guy. Right?
So there is really that stigma. I was talking to a guy at the event that we were at, the Sensei event. His name is Garrett Perry. And I want to say he's a town official or selectman of some sort for Northampton. And he was talking about getting the stigma out, by bridging music and cannabis, and kind of like everybody identifies with music and everybody likes to go to a concert. Everybody likes to hear live music. And, kind of how can we get rid of the stigma using music and, cannabis, like an event we had, Wednesday night. And I think that's awesome, right? I think any way that you can chisel down and break down that wall is fantastic. But in a conservative, traditionally conservative business like banking, you feel like you have a chisel and you're kind of trying to bring down an iron wall. You know what I mean? So it takes a lot of a lot of banging on that wall to get movement, but I'm here to bang, so that's kind of how we've been doing it.
I'm here to
Hang on
bang.
that thing all
That's how
day,
I've
right?
been
There's
Yeah,
a
I guess
song.
I don't know.
Right.
That could be taken out of context, I guess. My
No,
apologies.
no. Yeah, we'll keep it. We'll keep it above board a little bit. Rick, Michigan's one of the early adapters. They have a vibrant cannabis community culture. The Hash Bash, over 50 years of celebration. Is it Ann Arbor?
It is.
Good job. Tell us about the stigma that you're still fighting in Michigan.
Well, we've had Hash Bash for so many years, and 10,000 people attend Hash Bash on good weekends. It's the first Saturday in April, and when the weather is great, we flood the streets. And we still have people that are still using the same drug war arguments. What about the children? And you're going to bring crime to the neighborhood. All of the things that have been disputed are still being resurrected. And now we're seeing in Congress, or at least from some of the congressional representatives, this cannabis psychosis being used as a reason why there's so many mass shootings lately. I'm hearing this on so many different conservative social networks that they're trying to re-demonize cannabis.
That would be your Fox network, Laura Ingraham. Let's point the finger, please, because never mind. Keep going. I'm from Massachusetts. Let's just say, go ahead.
No, your distrust for Laura is a good one, and I'll say it too, though. But that's a common theme when you're trying to explain why it's not guns that's making all these people die in all these places, but it's actually the pot. Well, if you're a gun guy, you love that argument because now you've all of a sudden escaped responsibility for it. So, I mean, here in Michigan, I'm still hearing some of this, even from candidates for public office. So as advanced as Michigan's mature market is, and California is the same way too, there are still some people that are just never going to come to the correct frame of mind. And we sometimes say we just have to generation it, which means we have to let a bunch of people die off. And then the next wave comes up to rule things.
Yeah.
But they're waiting for that gateway to open, Rick. That the gateway drug. They're still waiting for the gateway, I guess.
Well, don't forget though, the drug war was the world's largest public relations scam. It was ever perpetrated on the planet, and it was very effective. And you can't fault people for not being able to shake the mental programming that they were exposed to for their entire lifetime.
Yeah, just read some of the research though that's coming out of the mature states like Colorado, where teen use of cannabis is going down. When you're a kid and you're told not to touch the stove, right? Because the stove is hot, correct? You're a kid. What'd we do, guys?
You still do it.
Oh, that's what hot sounds, right? Because you're told not to do it. You're a kid. You're going to push up against the parameters that your parents have put out there for you. And one of them usually is either alcohol and or weed. Okay. And that forces the kid to actually learn about that product from people other than their parents, right? Because let's face it, guys, we all learned lessons from our peers. Some of them were good. Some of them were not so good. It's just part of being a young person and growing up. And yet when I see the results of teen use going down in Colorado, it's because it's not taboo anymore. It's just another medicine, where wine, one glass of wine is a little medicinal, right? It's that same mentality that for whatever reason, again, continues to rear its ugly head. And you guys know me, you both know me now. It's one of the reasons why I started this media company, because I wanted the industry to have a place to go where they can talk about this openly and share what they're up against. Because traditional media, radio and TV, even though there's rumblings about they might be doing ads, they're still not allowing public service announcements in television or radio about the positive benefits of this plant. And that really bugs me for sure. That's my rant for the day. Brandon, you want to do another plug for Main Street Bank? Because I think you guys, what you're doing is helping normalize that industry more than anything else.
100%. So we're very happy to bank leaf touching and non-leaf touching entities in the state of Massachusetts. We will bank leaf touching entities out of state, provided they have a footprint in Massachusetts. I will bank non-leaf touching entities, payroll companies or technology companies or anything like that. I will bank you anywhere in the United States. I'm happy to do so. We do lend, again, more traditional lending, in line with kind of commercial, the loan to value is going to be a little bit lower. You're probably in that 60, 65, maybe 70% if you're pushing, type number. We do like to see it secured against real estate or land, and we do like obviously to have enough, debt service coming in to cover the loan. I mean, that's just regular fundamental, commercial lending. We will do mortgages, personal mortgages for people that work for cannabis companies. That's a different group, but I'm very happy to make the introduction. And anybody that wants to reach out to me directly, I don't know if you provide the contact information, Jimmy, or how you guys do it, but
just tell us how to get to you, Brandon.
Yeah, you can send me an email at bcurran@bankmainstreet.com. That's probably the easiest way to do it. And then I'll get you in the right hands, or I'll help you out myself personally. And the first thing I do with any one of my clients, I give you my personal cell phone number. So, you reach out to me, something comes up, I'm reading my kids, the Cat in the Hat, it's 8:00 at night, or I'm giving somebody a bath. I have a 5-year-old and an almost 7-year-old. I'll shoot you back a text. I'll call you back, and you can put your head on the pillow and wake up the next morning and know, hey, Brandon got this. He's going to take care of me in the morning. Yep. And if you deal with me long enough, I've gone a day without calling people back, and they're like, dude, I thought you had COVID. I thought you were dead. You're like in the midst of PPP loans, right? People were panicking, and they're like, you didn't call back for 2 hours. That's not like you. I'm like, I was getting a root canal. I'm sorry, but these things happen. But listen, I'm here. I'm a resource. I'm happy to help. Whether you bank with us or not, I'm happy to make connections. I'm happy to share my Rolodex with people. I love the business. I used to work selling ETFs and mutual funds on Wall Street. I used to be away from my family 20 nights a month, banging on doors on Wall Street, selling ETFs, right? Now I call them unequivocally the coolest group of people ever in the world, right? There's no judgment. No one cares what you are, who you are, where you came from, what race you are, your sexual orientation. No one cares, right? It's awesome. You go to that event, I had on Olakai flip-flops, shorts, and a t-shirt, right? You're not going to go anywhere on Wall Street dressed like that, right? So honestly, I love it. I love the business. I love the opportunity you gave me to come on, Jimmy. I want to keep growing with you guys. And, I appreciate all the viewership and all the listeners that are on now. And again, if you guys need me, definitely reach out.
Yeah, we've had a sustainable audience, and I love it when people hang around to watch We Talk News, which follows this live program. Rick, is there anything to add after that? That was a great way to end it.
No, it really was. And I've had such a great time co-hosting with you again, Jimmy, and I look forward to the next opportunity that you give me to do the same.
I appreciate that. And we appreciate your reports from Michigan every week. So that'll wrap it up for another edition of Green Rush Live, our regularly scheduled Business of Cannabis Live talk show. I do want to say that the Cannabis Resources Group is a new sponsor of the program. So we are going to effort back. It's what we call a make good in the business. Okay. And we'll reach out to Jay, we'll reach out to the CEO, and you'll hear more about Cannabis Resources. I thought that Frank Romita was awesome from SnapCapital, able to kind of share what they do and all that. So that was good. So once again, for Dan French, our video director, who did a hell of a job today. Not only did he put the news together, but he's like putting out fires during the show. I mean, it's amazing what he does. I thank you. I thank Isabel Turner, our production coordinator, and you, the viewers, because that's the most important thing. Please continue to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I think we're under 400 subscribers from 10,000. Can you please tell your friends to subscribe on YouTube? At least do that for us. Could you please? In the meantime, remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll see you next week. This edition of Green Rush Live is supported by Cannabis Resources, helping you grow with Cannabis funding. Check them out at cannabisresources.com.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems. Whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it actually will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
Coming up on We Talk News this week, multi-state operator Air Wellness opens on Boylston Street in the Back Bay of Boston. We talk with their CEO, Jonathan Sandelman. It's deja vu all over again, as Senator Chuck Schumer from New York expects to present his cannabis reform bill next week. Is this the right time? Again? Plus, PCM founder Jimmy Young talks to a Ukrainian CEO of SEO Profi about the challenges of running a business when his country is at war. Plus, is the weed policy in New York City for firemen and police going up in smoke? And it's Sensei Night in Holyoke as the cannabis community gathers to talk deals and party. All that and coast-to-coast cannabis news coverage on We Talk News next. Cannabis Media original content is supported by Salient Systems, your trusted name in video surveillance for the cannabis industry, and by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Accounting Buds, CPA services for the cannabis industry, and by stylighting.shop. Log on today to get your grow kit.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to We Talk News. I'm Elena Pinto for Pro Cannabis Media, and we're back after a short summer break. And a lot has happened in cannabis during those weeks, so let's get right to it. Federal action on cannabis reform could be imminent. Marijuana Moment reports that sources close to the publication are saying legislation to federally legalize the plant could be filed, quote, as early as next week, though the exact timing is still up in the air. There have been dueling cannabis bill battles on Capitol Hill over the last 2 years, with neither making it further than the House of Representatives. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has stalled on introducing a bill to lead said efforts, but apparently we could see that change soon. And it's interesting timing, as 6 US senators have sent a letter to President Joe Biden urging him to deschedule cannabis and issue pardons to everyone convicted of non-violent cannabis crimes. Vote Pro podcast. Phil Adams has more in this week's Washington, D.C. report.
Hi, I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro podcast, here with the We Talk News D.C. report. The White House is holding to its position that WNBA star Brittany Griner has been wrongfully detained in Russia. Griner was arrested at a Moscow airport last March and charged with possession of cannabis vape cartridges. Last week, the athlete pleaded guilty to the charge, which carries a possible 10-year sentence. The statement by the White House puts to rest the question of whether her guilty plea would affect the State Department's previous designation of Griner as a wrongfully detained American national. At a White House briefing, Press Secretary Curran Jean-Pierre was adamant that the U.S. has not changed its position. A lawsuit aimed at eliminating firearms restrictions for medical cannabis patients has been put on hold in the wake of the Supreme Court's recent Second Amendment ruling. Last April, Florida state officials sued the Justice Department over its policy of making state legal cannabis patients ineligible for gun ownership. As it stands, that policy forces people who qualify for medical marijuana programs to choose between their firearms and their medical cannabis treatments. In light of last month's landmark ruling expanding individual gun rights, the DOJ has requested more time to respond to the suit. The plaintiffs have agreed and have announced their intention to file an amended complaint. DC lawmakers made a legislative end run around a ban on adult use sales imposed by Congress. In a move aimed at circumventing the so-called Harris Rider, the DC City Council voted to allow citizens to self-certify as medical cannabis patients without requiring a doctor's recommendation. The rider, named for its author, Maryland Representative Andy Harris, prohibits the district from instituting a legal cannabis market despite DC's legalization of adult use in 2015. The rider was first attached to the House spending bill that same year and has been reinstated every year since then. This new legislation effectively gives all DC residents access to medical cannabis dispensaries in the district. DC Mayor Muriel Bowser has since signed the bill into law. That's the We Talk News DC report for this week. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast.
In other politics, the war in Ukraine has been tragic for that country. Many U.S. companies work with Ukrainian businesses who are still operating in that war-torn area. One is the CEO of SEO Profi, Viktor Karpenko. Ukraine is a cannabis-friendly country, and the challenges for marketing in the industry have seen his company of 200 employees survive and thrive through this difficult time. Victor is running his company from Florida now, with 75% of his workforce still in Ukraine. PCM founder Jimmy Young talked with Victor last week about his escape from his homeland.
I'm in US since the war started, so I basically was like one day, I heard me and my wife woke up in the morning, I think it was like 5 a.m. when the bombs just hit, and the window was open, and it was like so real, so we packed our clothes and went out of the town like in 15 or 20 minutes, just took the stuff we need actually, and just went to my parents, and then we moved from Ukraine because it still was possible to do that. Yeah. And then the borders were closed.
Yeah. I can't imagine living through that in the 21st century, to be honest with you. I'm guessing that you left behind a full company, friends, family. How difficult has this been the last few months?
Thank you for my super team that I have, because we have a lot of mature team leads that actually run different departments, and we just understand made coordination. So we created a chats where we talk what's going on, do you need any help, HR managers communicate with the people what they need, do they need apartment, or how, so we basically knew where everyone was moving around, and it was stressful first two weeks. We didn't know what's gonna be, right? And after 2 weeks we were stable, so we were working 85, 90% after 2 weeks, like normal mode.
You can catch the full interview with Victor and Jimmy Young Monday on In the Weeds. High Times is a well-known weed company around the world. They've been covering the industry since its legacy days, and the publication's name is synonymous with stoner culture. Well, now High Times looks to be elevating its legacy. New public records have revealed a deal made back in April for High Times to purchase its own consumption lounge in West Hollywood. Deborah Borchardt has the details in this week's Green Market Report.
I'm Deborah Borchardt from the Green Market Report, and this is the business update for We Talk News. This week, we got some earnings reports from a couple of companies. We heard from Organigram, who announced their results for their third quarter. They came in with revenue that was up 90% at $55 million. That was really better than last year's $29 million. It beat the Yahoo Finance average analyst estimate, and it increased over the second quarter's revenue of $43 million. So things seem to be going pretty well for Organigram right now. They're also increasing their market share up in Canada. We also heard from the Valens company. Now, they reported that their second quarter for 2022 was increased by 3.5% to $24 million. Now, that sounds good that they jumped to $24 million for the quarter, but that increase was only 3.5%, and that was a little slow. It wasn't great. But the real news out of Valens is that they reported a very large net loss of $160 million. That's a big number. This company has put up a lot of net losses over several quarters, so at some point, this is going to catch up to them. They've really got to get that under control. And then finally, we reported this week that the former finance director for the Los Angeles-based cannabis company, THC Designs, the gentleman's name is William McKenna, he's suing the company, saying that he was fired for refusing to cook the books. So apparently the owner of THC Designs wanted their finance director to tweak those liability numbers down a bit so that they could get some more money and raise some millions. This guy said, no, absolutely not. He refused to do it. He was fired. They got a third-party accountant to agree to this. And the finance director also said he thinks that the THC Designs was growing and selling psilocybin mushrooms on the side for cash. So lots of shady stuff alleged in this lawsuit. You can go to Green Market Report and check out all the dirty details. And that's it for this week. I'm Deborah Borchardt from the Green Market Report for We Talk News.
Massachusetts has been enjoying the fruits of legal cannabis for more than 5 years now, but the city of Boston still only has just a handful of retail shops for adult use. And the newest one is situated in one of the city's most popular and eye-catching neighborhoods, Back Bay. Air has just opened up shop right on Boylston Street, and the Pro Cannabis Media team was there for the grand opening. We Talk News producer Tori Chamberlain takes over our Massachusetts report with a closer look inside the store.
Hey, thanks, Lena. It was so much fun to be out there with the team in the Back Bay neighborhood today. I mean, it is such an iconic and popular place. So many tourists are always visiting the area. It's not far from Fenway Park. And of course, Newbury and Boylston Street have some of the best shopping in Boston. It's kind of like our Fifth Avenue. So it's a fitting place to plop a dispensary. PCM was there for the official ribbon cutting ceremony with Air's CEO, along with several prominent members of the Back Bay community, and a good turnout of a crowd too. You'll find the shop right there in the middle of that gorgeous neighborhood, but you'll have to keep your eye out as it's below eye level. Dropping a cannabis shop in the middle of this neighborhood is a whole new ballgame, and we spoke with Air's CEO about what it took to make it happen.
This is 4 years in the making, and it's because of this group that Back Bay allowed us to open on Boylston Street. And you heard the councilwoman speak. It's only Air that's been able to perform and live up to its commitment versus the other folks who have tried to come to this street. And that makes me super proud.
Hearing those words from a politician, knowing the battles you guys have to fight in the trenches just to get accepted, are we making progress in breaking down the stigma and getting to that new normal we all want?
Yes, I think every day we move the ball forward just a little bit at a time. But we've seen since I started in the business 5 years ago, where 35% of Americans were for the legalization of marijuana. Now those numbers are approaching 68, 70%. So of course we're making progress, but we need to take that progress and turn it into regulatory changes so that the plant, nature's medicine, becomes widely available to the people that need it.
Be sure to check out AIR next time you're strolling through the Back Bay. And meanwhile, Holyoke, Massachusetts, also known for being one of the state's most cannabis-friendly towns with at least 3 adult-use dispensaries. And it's also the location for another Sensei Night recently. It's an evening of music, networking, and of course, fun. Some 24 vendors showed up at Race Street, live in Holyoke, for the get-together hosted by Sensei Magazine. Sensei is a monthly publication distributed all over the country. Rich Guerra and Jake Boynton are the local reps for the magazine, which celebrates the new normal and the importance of collaboration in the cannabis industry. And what's a good event without music? Bo Sasser and the Sensei All-Stars, along with the Alchemistics, kept the crowd pumped. A crowd eager to get out and see the cannabis industry growing.
Cannabis business is thriving all across the state, luckily for us, and the magazine is now getting transported and distributed across the state as well, all the way out west, Great Barrington, Holyoke. And so for us to do our first Sensei Night back since the pandemic in Holyoke out west here, past Worcester, in a new region for me even, feels good. And to have people pack it in and all these companies show up, and it's just going to help us really be the full Massachusetts market, not just the greater Boston area.
It's all good news for us here in the Bay State as retail shops and events only continue to boom. That's it for the Massachusetts Report this week. I'm Tori Chamberlain for Weed Talk News.
Bay State Cannabis Report is supported by Holyoke Cannabis, Holyoke's finest cannabis recreational experience.
In New York State, cannabis regulators have just approved rules that will set the state up to start accepting cannabis retail applications from people impacted by the war on drugs. And those applications could open up as soon as next month. But other regulations don't seem to be so solid. A review of statute by the New York City Law Department says it's unlawful for agencies to conduct screenings for THC. On the heels of that, the NYPD said it would stop drug testing for officers for cannabis. But just hours later, the force reversed course on that decision, saying it will not be changing its policy pending a review and consultation with city officials. Meanwhile, the New York Fire Department sent out its own memo stating there will be a policy change in light of legal analysis by the city. But actual rules won't be issued for another 2 weeks. So for now, the union is urging members to wait until the department announces official changes before considering any legal cannabis use. Lots happening in the Big Apple. So now let's travel next door to New Jersey, where Jill Goldsberry checks in from Jersey City, and Pennsylvania correspondent Claudia Post attends the Garden State's largest cannabis networking event yet.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Jill in New Jersey and welcome back to the New Jersey Report. We took a couple of weeks off and now we're back. Here's what's happening in and around the Garden State. Cannabis workers are looking to unionize now. 4 major cannabis companies are negotiating contracts to unionize their workforce in New Jersey to bring a total of 6 multi-state operators that will be unionized. Collectively, that means having around 250 new workers under the union umbrella, according to Hugh Giordano, director of the UFC Local 360. The multi-state operators, also known as alternative treatment centers, are in deep talks with the Local 360, are Ascend, Acreage, Columbia Care, and GTI. And hopefully this will all be done by Labor Day. Moving on to other news, Happy Monkey, a New York City cannabis lifestyle brand and events company, recently celebrated 710 Dab Day with a fabulous sold-out rooftop soiree at a still undisclosed location. But we know a great time was had by all. Celebrities like Fab Five Freddy, members and industry all came together for one night. Congratulations to Vlad and the Happy Monkey family for an incredible night in cannabis. If you missed out on this one, we hear there's another one coming up in September, so stay tuned for that. I'm Jill Jill Goldsberry, and that's it for We Talk News, New Jersey.
I'm Claudia Post from Scarlet Express, and I'm right here in the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, reporting for We Talk News. First up, a Pennsylvania bill was approved last week, which would protect registered medical cannabis patients from prosecution, always a good thing, under the state's zero tolerance for THC. I don't know, none of this makes sense because they want to have marijuana, they don't want to have marijuana, it makes no sense. The state's zero tolerance policy has been used without proof of impairment to penalize drivers who are registered cannabis patients. So even though you have a card, it's state approved, you can still be penalized. But now we're out there protecting our patients, which is a great thing. The governor, who is absolutely pro-cannabis, signed a bill on Monday that includes provisions to protect banks and insurers that work with licensed medical marijuana businesses. That is such a big deal to protect banks and insurers. This legislation is another example of how states are working to provide protections to financial institutions that are willing to work with people in our industry as Congress continues to stall on a federal fix. When will that happen? Who knows? We're just so far behind the rest of the world. Pennsylvania lawmakers and advocates for legal cannabis say uneven access to marijuana has pushed consumers toward widely available Delta 8. Now, as you know, Delta 8 is not really regulated, doesn't get tested the same way that medical marijuana does. And the packaging is obviously not specifically marked with the dosing, etc. So that's a problem. A state senator here is now pushing to implement regulations that would keep it available while ensuring its safety. Okay, people, that's a wrap in Pennsylvania. Just wanted to make one more comment, if I may. Yesterday, I was part of a webinar around interstate commerce. Interstate commerce would change the landscape of how the states could trade marijuana between themselves, so that states where you don't have the optimum growing season or soil would be able to avail themselves, for instance, of plants that were grown in Oregon or California or Washington. This will absolutely upend the industry. I say this because I have a background in transportation and logistics, and I think it would be a great idea. Anyway, that's it for me. That's a wrap from Scarlet Express. And I'll be back next week to talk about what's hot and what's not in Pennsylvania. For We Talk News, have a fabulous week.
Since our last report, the great state of Minnesota has legalized THC edibles for adults 21 and older, but it might have been a mistake. One key Republican chairman on the legislation, State Senator Jim Abler, says he thought the bill only dealt with Delta 8 regulations, not full spectrum THC. He has since suggested that the legislator should reverse course on its decision, but the governor has already signed the bill into law. So it seems the people of Minnesota shouldn't be punished for a lawmaker not understanding a bill. So hopefully they get to have their edible cake and eat it too. And sticking with the Great North, let's travel over to the Great Lakes State and check in with Michigan Normal Executive Director Rick Thompson.
Hello again. This is Rick Thompson with the Michigan Report for Weed Talk News. Let's begin. Cannabis sales rose again in June to an impressive $187.4 million. Now that's up 0.5% from May's sales total, but it still falls a little bit short of April's record-setting numbers. Traditionally, this is the year's high point for cannabis sales. July was 2021's largest sales month, and in 2020, it was June. Sales of medical marijuana declined 15% in May and dropped another 7.6% last month, while adult use cannabis sales rose 1.7%. Now, for comparison, adult use cannabis sales were $166 million last month, and medical sales, $21.5 million. Rollable, smokable cannabis sales continue to dominate the market as flower and trim sales combined for 94 of those $166 million in the adult use market. Importantly, the Cannabis Regulatory Agency reports pricing per pound of cannabis in Michigan is at an all-time low, with per pound pricing at $1,959, the first time that price has sunk below $2,000. It's more than just a 6% decline in price in just 1 month. That price is down more than 41% in the course of just 1 year. Notably, the end of June is the end of the first half of the calendar year for 2022, and Michigan's sales total for the first half of the year is $1.03 billion. Now, that number may be barely over $1 billion, but it is up 27% over last year and should put us on track to hit $2 billion in cannabis sales in calendar year 2022. Beloved Detroit media icon Ann Quinnett, Q Sarfaw, is launching a new line of THC products to complement her existing line of CBD products for health and beauty. The line of pre-rolls will be released under the Q Culture brand name and are produced in a collaboration with Mitten Bliss, a cannabis processor from Kalkaska. Q was a Fox 2 Detroit Morning News personality until multiple sclerosis forced her into retirement, but her healing journey eventually led to cannabis products, and she now has shed all her MS meds in favor of cannabis-based solutions. You can learn more about Q's amazing journey at a high tea she's holding on July 23rd at the Jam Handy in Detroit, a presentation she performs regularly with the help of cannabis specialty nurse Kathleen Graham. The tea features food, drinks, and education in a fun and exciting setting. You can learn more about the high tea at the Q Culture website, QULTURE.com. Well, Loom Cannabis, one of Michigan's largest retailers of cannabis products, has closed 4 stores in a retail retraction, which was widely expected from market observers. The 4 stores include Bay City, Sheboygan, Southfield, and tiny Christmas, Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula. Now, the spin doctors over at Loom have characterized this as a realignment, and Loom's president told a television reporter that the company is still committed to deepening its retail footprint in the Midwest's largest cannabis market. To support the realignment, the president stated company is opening their new Ann Arbor store today. The store's Southfield location was open for medical cannabis sales only and will be closed until Southfield adopts an adult use ordinance, which would allow them to sell recreational cannabis at that store. Loom is not well respected in the cannabis community as their predatory practice of litigating any denial of licensure by a municipality and some questionable practices employed when dealing with Michigan's Native American populations. Loom reiterated their goal of having 29 open retail outlets in Michigan before the end of 22, which seems like a harder goal to achieve after closing 4 locations. Well, in our final story, Detroit is finally getting their licensing act together. Now, they've approved issuing licenses for adult use cannabis retailers starting August 1st. City Council voted Tuesday to allow the application process to begin for those limited license types, which are those businesses selling cannabis to adult consumers 21 years of age and older. Detroit has already been taking and approving applications for the unlimited license types, including cannabis cultivation, processing, testing, and transport. Tuesday's vote comes as Detroit is defending itself against 2 different lawsuits claiming the method being used by the city to approve those applications is discriminatory. The application window is only 1 month long. Under the current proposal, half of the adult use retail licenses issued will be to social equity qualifiers, and half will be to the city's existing medical marijuana retailers. The August application window will determine who wins approval for the 28 adult use retail establishments, 10 micro businesses, and 10 consumption establishment licenses in this round of approvals. Several other periods of applications and approvals are scheduled for the future. It remains to be seen if any of the licenses issued in this process will stick, because the courts will absolutely have the final say over the controversial policies being employed in Michigan's largest city. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News.
Also new since our last Weed Talk News report, cannabis regulators in Washington state have decided words matter, particularly when it comes to this still green industry. Officials have adopted a motion to officially implement legislation that replaces the word marijuana with cannabis in state law. During the bill signing ceremony, the governor noted the term marijuana has, quote, a racist history in the United States. So let's send it over to Josh Kincaid for more of what's happening in Washington state.
I'm Josh Kincaid from the Talking Hedge with the Washington State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Cannabis legalization in Washington has not led to an increase in other vice products. The liberalization of cannabis laws in Washington state has not led to an increase in the use of alcohol, cigarettes, and abuse of pharmaceutical pain drugs among adults 18 to 25, according to research published this month in the Journal of Adolescent Health. The study disputes long-standing claims that cannabis is some sort of a gateway substance. In fact, in many instances, cannabis regulations is associated with the decreased use of other substances, including many prescription medications. The findings indicate that most critical public health concerns surrounding cannabis legalization and the evolution of legalized cannabis markets may be specific to cannabis use and related consequences. The research notes that the findings add to the evidence that the legalization of non-medical cannabis has not led to a dramatic increase in the use of alcohol, cigarettes, and non-prescribed opioids. Next week, you guys are going to find out more about the Washington State cannabis scene. But with that, we're going to have to roll up this Washington State Cannabis Report. I'm Josh Kincaid from the Talking Hedge, reporting for Weed Talk News. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out.
The cookies empire continues to grow. This weekend, the popular multi-state brand will open its very first location in Missouri, specifically St. Louis. It's in partnership with 315 Primo Cannabis, a Missouri-based medical cannabis company. And while medical patients rave over the growing number of options, efforts to get adult use cannabis on this November's ballot are increasing as well. Brandon Jones has more in this week's Missouri Report.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones again from Distribution Maven with Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And yeah, it's pretty exciting that Cookies is actually getting their location open in St. Louis this next week. And word is Berner himself is actually going to come the first week of August, check out the location and hang out with some Missouri locals. So we're pretty excited to go out there. I'm pretty sure I'm going to make the little 3-hour drive to go out and hang out with Berner and check out the new location. So as everybody knows, 7/10 just happened, probably the second biggest holiday here in the cannabis world. Here in Kansas City, it's actually been fun to see it kind of normalized. So on 7/9, there was an event that actually was held by Illicit at a bar here in West Bottoms that actually allowed alcohol to be served. And at midnight, they had a release of a couple of new of their concentrates. So it was a pretty cool party. Lots of people out there in the industry, indoor, outdoor. There was DJs both inside and outside, had some go-go dancers, lots of just cool ambiance and a lot of cool people. Then the next day, Relief Resources at their location dispensary here in Kansas City actually had live music, live band. We're handing out umbrellas because it was hot to keep people out of the sun. And then followed that, I went to Shady Phrase Farms, which is an awesome little local spot that allows consumption on the farm where they've got goats and pigs. And it was just a kind of more of a relaxed setting, got hammocks hanging out everywhere, just a little bit more relaxed area to consume and enjoy for 7/10. And another big thing that happened since I've been gone talking about concentrates, 2 people here in the cannabis world in Missouri that started through social media and one also through radio actually have been white labeled. One, Artisans of Dank group, was a big Facebook group that started out for my good buddies. And they've actually been white labeled by Coco Labs here, and that their concentrates are out in I think almost 12 dispensaries now. And then Waxy Brown, also known as Daniel Jones, who has a radio show in Rolla, Missouri, got his put out by Sundro Cannabis. So both their concentrates are going to be put out by actual labs and dispensaries here, and really excited. Another big brand that's bringing their concentrate and their cartridges here is 40 Tons. My personal favorite MSO for social equity, just actual brand recognition. And they actually do a lot of hiring fairs to get people that were incarcerated for cannabis crimes, jobs in the industry. So I would really check out those three groups. 40 Tons hooked up with Good Day Farms, Artisan of Dank, again with Coco Labs, and Daniel Jones and Waxy Brown, aka Waxy Brown with Sundro Cannabis, all here in Missouri. So things are happening quick and fast, and we really do hope recreational gets put on the ballot and gets passed here soon. So again, I'm Brandon Jones from Distribution Maven with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Great to be back, guys. Have a good week.
And finally, here's a law you may have to chew on for a while. If you're planning to take a trip to vacation land this summer, take a little extra change with you. The state of Maine taxes medical cannabis at 5.5%, but THC edibles at 8%. And the reason is because edibles in Maine are subjected to a meal tax, the same way you'd be taxed for dinner. You can expect that tax to tick up when purchasing your favorite infused goodie. So enjoy the views in Maine, but mind your wallet if you're planning to medicate. And that's it for Weed Talk News this week. I'm Elena Pinto for Pro Cannabis Media. And remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it wisely. We'll see you next time.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first. Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information. Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.